All right. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular board meeting of Thursday, February 11, 2021 of the CUSD Board of Education. Item 1 on the agenda is a flag salute. So who has a flag today?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Pam, for that. And then let's see. So moving to item 1.2, board agenda approval. Any updates to the agenda?
I do, Jerry. I would like to ask that we pull item 11.2 under the information, the board policy first read. This was a sample and a very generic board policy that we received from CSBA, and staff would really like to have a chance to take it back to a committee to have it reviewed and include some stakeholder input, and we can use either a wellness committee or a PAC committee, and then bring it back for a first read so it better represents CUSD.
Okay, all right. We have a amendment on the table here to remove 11.2 from the agenda. Anybody else? Otherwise, I will welcome a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the agenda omitting 11.2.
Thank you, Lori. We have a motion from Lori.
Second.
All right, second from Sylvia. Let's go ahead and vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to then item 2.1, public comments on closed down the closed session. Leslie, do we have any public comments on the closed session?
We do not.
All right, great, thanks. And then item 3, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn to closed session then, and we expect to be back around 6 p.m. So stay tuned, folks. Thank you. Let me scan this to see if we're all back. Let's see. So, all right, great. So 6 o'clock, I'm gonna go ahead and reconvene us back from closed session. Give me a sec here. Let me get my trusty agenda back up here and keep us on order. All right, so we're it's 6 o'clock. Go ahead and reconvene back to reconvene back to open session. So item 6, report out from the closed session. So so the board has determined in closed session that we will not go out for a superintendent search and will instead appoint Stacy Yao as superintendent. We will be consulting the union leadership on this appointment and welcome feedback from our community stakeholders. The board will then consider action on approving Mrs. Yao's contract at an upcoming regular board meeting. So that's our report from closed session. And then let's see. So then item 7 is classified employee of the month. So this time we have Susan Satya from Lincoln Elementary. Oh, hello, Susan, and hello. I guess you're not a dog, right? Oh, sorry.
You're laughing at the cat one.
Let me, I like to start out by reading the nomination for Susan. Susan is a kind, patient, knowledgeable, dedicated, dependable, and encouraging person who is both an inspiration and an asset to the Lincoln community. She's very tech savvy, and yet she always explains things in terms that we can understand. And with her great sense of humor, she always keeps things fun and lighthearted. Susan seems to work around the clock. Staff and students go to her via text, phone, email, Google Meet, etc. for assistance and advice no matter what time it is. And Susan always responds promptly with a great solution. Her knowledge and resourcefulness are a beacon, especially during remote learning when everything is so dependent on technology. Susan is a superhero who always comes to our rescue. In addition to providing staff and students with tech assistance and training, Susan also takes on a number of projects that better our community. Last spring, with a sudden shelter-in-place ordinance and everyone had to work from home just before the end of the school year, Susan took ownership of the half-finished yearbook project and worked tirelessly with a vendor so that we could release the yearbook on time. At the start of the school year, she distributed student tech devices as early as 6:30 in the morning so that parents could pick them up on their way to work. And during the year, Susan set up virtual recess for students to enjoy with friends so that they will not miss too much of the social aspect of distance learning. Susan is an amazing, caring, and supportive colleague who has a wonderful relationship with the whole Lincoln community. She truly deserves the honor of being the district's classified employee of the month. All right, well, congratulations, Susan. Do
Thank
we
you.
have a speaker or someone like to speak?
I would love to speak.
All right, well, Mrs. Kropp, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, board and executive cabinet members, for allowing us to recognize Susan Satya as the classified employee of the month. There is so much to say about Susan. She is dedicated, hardworking, and devoted to our community. She has been instrumental in getting our site up and running with distance learning. Not only has she been a support to staff members with training and troubleshooting, but she has worked tirelessly to ensure that every student has the device that he or she needs. And she also helps our families to troubleshoot. As Jerry mentioned, she's seen at Lincoln as early as 6:30 in the morning to meet families to provide a device for the day. Also as late as 7, 8 o'clock at night. She works tirelessly to fit into the parent schedule to make sure that our kids have what they need to get on their meets. And I'm so appreciative. In addition to her tech duties, Susan has gone above and beyond in support of our students. As Jerry said in past years, she has worked with our yearbook club to give 4th and 5th grade students experience in creating a yearbook. She has offered after-school coding classes, utilizing the support from our neighboring Monte Vista kids, giving them a leadership opportunity as well. In distance learning, Susan is often the first face that our newest families see, and she welcomes them wholeheartedly. She answers questions for a new family and often goes as far as to hook them up with our PTA to make sure that our newest Lincoln families are immediately welcomed into our community. This recognition is so well deserved. Susan, we appreciate you, and we are so thankful that you are a part of the Lincoln community and CUSD. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak? If not, I actually would like to say something myself. So I met Susan, gosh, many years ago as a kindergarten parent volunteering in her computer lab. And, and so as a volunteer, you always go get there a little early. And I remember just being there, and I was impressed with Susan's meticulous care in how she set up the lab perfectly for the kids before they come in. And then just in watching her working with them, just the patience, especially working with these kindergartners. I remember this drawing program that was kind of hard to use. And it's just the way you worked with them with such loving care. Actually, last night I told my kids, both of them remember you, one's at Kennedy and the other's off at Monte Vista now, that you were getting this award. And they said, yeah, she totally deserves it. And I asked why. And one of them said, oh, it's because whenever I did something wrong, she'd take the time to explain it to me rather than yell at me like you do. So anyway, so thank you for that, Susan. You have an impact on, had an impact on generations of students that's gone through Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And thanks for volunteering with our school lab.
Yes. Okay. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would. Thank you. And thank you, board and executive members, for letting me have this time to speak. And thank you, Anne, for your kind words. That's make me blush. And thanks to those who nominated and voted for me, and to CSEA Employees Appreciation Committee for selecting me as the Employee of the Month. I want to take this opportunity to shout out to my fellow SITs. School Site Instructional Technology Specialist is our job title. At each school, like me, support all levels of technology use to students and staff, and to teachers, obviously, and in the classroom and outside of classroom sometimes. And we are really, each of us, a one-person IT shop. And many of us work in IT. I worked in, many areas of technology in my past. And, IT shop has people with various skills. We have technical skills, we have personal skills. So each of us is a single person IT shop to do everything A to Z. We are also the connection between school and the district to distribute information and to help pass, along technologies or implementations to our school environment. So I think very highly of my coworkers, SIDS, even though there's only one at each school, but the 25 of us often work together to share our pool of knowledge so that we can help each other out. And definitely a big shout out to Lincoln staff, where I am nurtured and supported and loved. And they show me every day how much they appreciate me. And they are the kindest, most, the best people I've worked with ever. The last 13 years has been a blast, and that's why I enjoy working there. I guess it shows in the work that I do because I really, think I've got the best workplace ever. You inspire me, and I'm humbled by the teachers particularly and the staff, how we dedicate all our effort to the well-being of our students. Emotionally and academically in every which way we can, we help them out. So go Leopards. So thanks again. And I appreciate this award very much. And it can only make me work even harder.
Congratulations, Susan.
Thanks.
Congratulations, and thank you, Susan. We're very lucky to have you here in the district and certainly in the Lincoln community. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Sherry, we do have one public comment on this item.
I'm sorry. I should have checked for that earlier. Let's please invite the speaker.
Okay, so Mark, if you'd raise your hand.
Evening, all. I am one of Susan's co-workers as a sits at another school, and actually, I don't think it's an accident that she's the second sits this school year to be named classified employee of the month. I just wanted to recognize Susan as for her passion and for her energy, because even among sits, her creativity and her passion is at a level really unsurpassed by any of us. And I just wanted to personally appreciate her and congratulate her on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. That's very nice of you.
Thank you, Mark, for that comment. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. That would be public comments. So let's see here. So the public comments, this is a portion of the meeting for the public to make comments on items that are not on the agenda tonight. And if you would like to comment on the agenda item, we'll take those comments when those items come up later in the meeting. And so there's a link to a comment card on our website, and just please fill out the comment card and we'll call on you to speak when it's your turn to comment. Leslie, do we have any comments today on item 9?
We do not, but we do have an employee organization that would like to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I skipped over that, didn't I? I'm sorry about that. So it's going to go back to item 8 then. And I understand we have Kate Lee from CEA who will speak tonight.
Correct. Welcome, Kate.
Okay, welcome, Kate. Yes.
Hi, thank you. So good evening, board, executive cabinet, all our amazing CEA members, all of our wonderful CUSD staff, and our dear parent community in CUSD. It is good to be with you this evening. Currently, our county COVID metrics continue to decline, and we now have hope of vaccine availability to ensure the safety we need to return to a more pre-pandemic normalcy in our personal lives as well as in our schools. Given these developments, I'm pleased to be able to report that the CEA and CUSD negotiating teams have reached agreement on an MOU to reopen schools for in-person learning. As always, I want to thank CUSD for our collaborative work and negotiations and to listening to teachers' concerns. Earlier today, CUSD emailed all certificated staff a CUSD CEA joint communication from our last negotiations that attached the MOU as well. I have just come from an all-member meeting with NCEA, where I presented a slideshow of a summary of the MOU and took questions and answers, and we'll continue to have those all-member meetings when we return, and then finish up our ratification process and voting for this MOU. I will leave the details of the agreement to the executive cabinet to cover in their presentations tonight. Instead, I would like to help everyone understand the complexities that we have faced to reach this agreement and our other MOUs during this COVID environment. I'll also speak to what we all need to understand about instructional methods during distance and hybrid learning. It has been almost a full year now of unknowns and never befores in dealing with this pandemic. So we have had to create new frameworks, materials, and methods to achieve our shared interest of providing safety, educational rigor, and social emotional well-being for our students and our teachers. This has been made even more difficult due to the multiple and often conflicting needs and limitations in the COVID environment and of our stakeholders. This includes the spikes and spread of COVID in our county, the ever-changing state and county guidelines, the financial crisis of our district, a parent community where 60% of our families want their children to stay in distance only, and 40% want their children to be back in the schools in person and learning. Plus the needs of our certificated staff for online instructional materials and platforms, technology, professional development and training, for childcare and the accommodations needed for our members in the high-risk category, as well as our members who want to come back and teach in person as soon as possible once safety standards are met. It has not been easy, to say the least. But I think we have managed to develop a well thought out plan, because that's what a MOU really is, a plan between stakeholders that addresses and resolves many of these conflicting issues. CUSD and CEA are committed to continue to collaboratively confer and consult on the other details of schedules and instructional methods to ensure that rigor and well-being I mentioned earlier continues. I would also like to address the board's recent directives to the executive cabinet for more synchronous instruction. You've been mentioning it for the last 2 or 3 board meetings, and I think it's important to go back again to talk about what that really means. What is synchronous? I hope this will also help our parent community's understanding of that term as well. I actually discussed and explained the difference between synchronous and asynchronous instruction when we began this year in distance learning. So this is a refresher or a reminder that most of our school day in both middle and elementary school is synchronous. It already is synchronous. In elementary, we have 3 synchronous blocks every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday that total about 3.5 to 4 hours every day. In middle school, teachers are synchronous during each of their 3 to 4 65-minute periods on those same days, as well as during their additional office hours in the afternoon. Does synchronous mean teachers are in a live meet with every single student during these synchronous times? Not necessarily. Synchronous means being virtually available online at all times. So during synchronous times, blocks, periods, or office hours, what teachers and students are actively engaged in may look different. They may be together in a whole class Google Meet with their teacher. They may be working on their assignments independently while their teacher is available to them via a Google Doc chat or Q&A via Google Classroom or Seesaw. They may be in a small group Google Meet with their teacher, and they may be getting targeted instruction and differentiated instruction in those small groups or individual lessons. All of these are synchronous instructions. Being able to teach and learn within all these different synchronous modes is essential to not tie a teacher or a student to a live meet and screen all day. It also allows teachers to individualize instruction, and students can have more opportunities to talk, to share their ideas with their peers and their teachers. I can assure you that a student learns far more and experiences greater engagement using these varieties of synchronous instructional methods than they do sitting in a live meet environment with 20 to 35 of their classmates all day. So please understand and use these new terms for instructional methodologies accurately and holistically. And we are more than happy to discuss and show you and share with you the different ways that we work with our students in synchronous time. Thank you for your support during this difficult time. And I look forward to continue to work together with the district.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for taking the time today here to share with us this update and with the community also. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, and apologies for skipping section 8 or a little.
No
early.
worries.
Yeah. All right, then let's see. We've done public comments here. So item 10, consent. I think we have an Apple item on here this time. So welcome a motion. Unless anyone would like to pull anything.
I move that we approve the Apple item.
All right, that would be 10.1. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Satish. Let's go ahead and vote on this item then. Item 10.1. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. And then,
No.
Correction, so 4 and with.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's correct. It's 4. It's 4-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks.
Right. Great. And then could I get a motion for the remaining items, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for 10.2 to 10.10.
Thank you, Satish. 10.2 for 10.10. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sylvia. All right, so voting on items 10.2 through 10.10, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, a motion passes 5-0. All right, now moving on to item 11.1, the independent audit report. So who will make the presentation? Is it Jeff?
Yeah, actually, Jeff, turn it over to him, and we do have the audit firm here is available as well. So Jeff, you ready?
It will actually be me, Dorothy.
Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you. Good evening. We have been working with Crow this past year. They are the new auditing firm that we hired to conduct our fiscal year 19-20 audit of the district's financial records. Despite their work starting in the middle of the pandemic, there were some challenges in doing audit virtually, but overall it was a smooth transition. Charles Rabley, who is present today, is the CPA assigned to do the audit work for our district and will be presenting the audit report tonight, and will also answer any questions you might have. Charles, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and present. I know it's not a normal scenario. Obviously, normally we would be right in front of you in the boardroom and talking about this audit result, but we're making it work. So we've got a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about, some required communications, and then I wanted to point out a couple of pages in the deliverables, the attachments there that are provided as part of the agenda package online. One of the main things that we need to communicate is kind of our responsibility as your auditor versus management responsibility. Our responsibility is to, our objective is to give an opinion over the financial statements of the district, and in this case as well, Measure H, whether those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. Because Cupertino Union School District is a governmental entity, we're also required to audit under government auditing standards as well. So we follow both regular to look to make sure that those are fairly stated in all material respect under general accounting standards, but also we're following government auditing as well. Management, on the other flip side of things, management is responsible for the financial statements themselves, and they're responsible for giving us the information we need to be able to conduct our audit. I also wanted to mention some of the timing. Dorothy alluded to the timing of when we did our audit. You know, it was a little bit of a different scenario this way in 2020, where we normally would be coming on site, especially with our first year being on part of your audit team. We were able to adapt to the needs that we had, which is to do this audit remotely. So I think we were able to successfully execute that and to transmit information back and forth as needed in a secure format. So that was an important consideration for us. And then also I would point out if we had any audit adjustments for the financial statements in order to give that opinion over that financials, we would be communicating that out as well right now. There were no adjustments that we had to record in order to give our opinion. So that's a good result as well. If you clicked on the audit report, you also went to the back, perhaps, if you're familiar with that, and looked to the findings section. I won't drag you there because there's no findings to report, which is another great result. I would, Jeff, I think you're controlling the the PowerPoint, the PDF, I should say. If you can go to the audit opinion, which is just after the table of contents. Yeah, so this is kind of the culmination of our work. It's the auditor's opinion. The top of the second page is where folks look. If you're looking at the ultimate result, that's our opinions paragraph. So that's where we say, in this case, an unmodified opinion or clean opinion over the financial statements of the district. I think the fact that you guys came out with a first-year audit without any findings to report in this document is a significant undertaking, and I think that's a testament to management's efforts, to be able to not only establish a control system that allows the financial statements to be fairly stated, but also, to be able to, like I said before, provide us the information we needed for the audit. And sometimes that can be just as much of a challenge as the day-to-day accounting. So I like to point that out on that page. There is another page that I'd like to draw your attention to, and I want to make sure I get the right number for the PDF. So if you go to the PDF, page 76. Yeah, so this page is, I think, a nice summary of all the results of what we do for you, excluding the Measure H bonds. This is the financial statement audit, but it's also a compliance audit for federal requirements and for state requirements. In this year, again, I mentioned we gave unmodified opinions, and this page just summarizes all those opinions. The middle part of the page talks about your federal awards. And what that's basically saying is, hey, we gave and we did an audit over your federal programs, right? So in this case, for 2020, we audited the child nutrition cluster and also your special education cluster of programs. So those two programs are significant to the district because of one reason or another, whether they were large or whether they hadn't been audited in more than 2 years, they were required to be audited this year. And so that is a kind of a summary of the federal requirement. And because you're in the state of California, you have a state compliance audit, and that's also what we conducted concurrent to the other two. That's that last section there, again, saying an unmodified opinion. I'll take a second. If there's questions over the audit report for the district, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I'll move on to Measure H and show a page in there that I want to point out.
Anyone have any clarifying questions on this so far? No.
Okay.
It looks like we don't, so please continue.
Okay. So if we can open the performance audit, I think is the one I really want to take your eye to, because the last page of that. So at a very high level, the education code has established an organization that tells us, it's called the Education Audit Appeals Panel. They tell us what to audit in your audit report for your district and also for these bonds. So there's two different components. One is the financial audit, where we look at, kind of like you would see on any other for-profit entity, and like with the district, the financial statements of the bonds. So what happened during the year, and then what was the end fund balance. The other piece that we're required to conduct is a performance audit. And this performance audit looks at expenditures from those proceeds of the Measure H bonds and says, were they compliant with Proposition 39, which is what those bonds were authorized under in the election, but also were they qualifying expenditures under your project list that the board has approved? Okay, And so of that, those are two big components to undertake, and they're different than a financial statement audit. So I like to take you to this page because it talks about the compliance procedures we did and what we tested. So under your scope paragraph, there's this it says all caps, there's scope. We had a total of 12.9 million, almost 13 million of expenditures from the bond dollars in 2020. And in total, we tested, the third bullet point under methodology talks about what we tested. We tested 8.2 million of those expenditures, which is about 64% of the dollar total that was expended. So pretty good coverage. And we looked at those expenditures to make sure that, again, that they complied with the Prop 39 and your project list. And those were taken from a cross section of different types of expenditures. So not only were we just looking at those large capital, type asset, purchases, but if there were any other smaller supplies, those are also included in our population that's subject to our sampling and can be picked up for testing as well. So again, the result of this was, again, a clean opinion. So there were no compliance issues. We're giving, in all of these audits, we give reasonable assurance rather than absolute assurance. And the reason I make that statement is because in any audit, we're looking at a sample of transactions rather than every single transaction. So in our testing that we did, whether it be on the financial audit of the district or on the district audit or on the bond audits, there were no exceptions in our testing that we did. So I'm happy to take any questions. I didn't have anything else I really wanted to touch on in the audit reports, but if you had any questions on Measure H, I can address that, or if there were other questions.
All right, thank you, Charles. So this item is an information presentation, so we're not going to be discussing or taking action at this time, but we are open for clarifying questions. So any of my colleagues here have clarifying questions for Charles or Dorothy? Seeing none, I think
One
oh, yes.
Jerry,
Go ahead.
what frequency at which we do this? How like once in a year, once in 6 months?
Yeah, this is an annual financial audit. So each fiscal year of the district has an external audit.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Satish, it is also done twice a year. So they come around March, April for an interim audit, and then they come back when we close by the time we do the closing of the fiscal books around August, September. This time we went through October, but they come twice a year to look at everything.
Thanks, Dorothy, for clarifying.
All right. Any other questions from anyone?
I don't have any questions, but just thank you and congratulations to our business services team for a clean audit. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks. All right, moving on then. Let's see where we pulled 11.2 from the agenda. So moving on to 11.3, the reopener proposals. So who's making the presentation?
This will be Leslie.
All right.
So it'll be really brief, but yes. So tonight we are bringing to you our Sunshine proposal for negotiations with CSEA, which is one of our classified unions. A Sunshine is just our bargaining proposal, and it needs to be presented at a public meeting. And so we're bringing it today just for discussion, really discussion information, and we will bring it back at the next meeting for you to take action on. In our reopening agreements, we typically discuss compensation, health, and welfare. And then we have the opportunity to bring up 2 other items of each group's interest. And so we are asking to discuss and negotiate the evaluation and reclassification process. And they are asking to negotiate safety conditions of employment and layoff and reemployment language. And so when we get back from February break and after this has been moved forward at the board level, we will begin our negotiation sessions with CSEA once again.
All right, thanks, Leslie. And again, opening it up for clarifying questions. Anybody have anything? All right, and Okay, and just checking, do we have any public comments on this item, Leslie?
Not on this item. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, so moving on then. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and move on. Thank you, Leslie, for the presentation, 11.3. So now moving on to item 12.1, the school safety plans. So this is going to be a discussion item. And so who will lead us off?
Allison's going to share a short presentation with you, and then we'll be open for questions and discussion.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. And Jeff, I think it's the very top one there, somewhere at the very top. School safety plans. There we go. Yeah, so thank you. This is an annual compliance occurrence. And so when we're talking about safety tonight, it's not COVID safety. This is our regular safety planning that we do every year. And our charge is to be sure that we have an approved plan by March 1st. So we're bringing this to you for the first time for your input. And our hope is that you will ask questions, raise any concerns, and hopefully check in with your assigned school secretary in the next board meeting. We'll be asking for your approval at the next board meeting so that we can achieve that March 1st approval requirement. So just as a reminder, we're going to review some of the essential components, and then we'll see if you have any questions. So moving on to the next slide. So we had some updated requirements that occurred in January 2019, and this reminded us that we are required to update the plans annually and use a collaborative planning process. The overall goal is related to the prevention of crime and violence on the school campus. And essentially what this did, that is outlined on the next slide, is it took our old approach of just kind of thinking about the policies and procedures, like the fire drill aspects, and it merged that with what we now know about school climate and how creating a safe environment at school is about policies and procedures, also all of the things that we do around creating a supportive school climate for students. And so the school safety plan, as noted on the next slide, is part of our broader system that we talk about, our triangle there, pyramid of MTSS, how we support our students. And it also factors into all of the other components that we bring to you throughout the year, the LCAP and the SIPSAs when we're in our regular routine with that. So you'll see some components in the school safety plans that also show up in other documents. It's sort of a subset of those other planning tools. These are developed at the school site, and it's a collaborative public process using our parent engagement teams and in collaboration with our law enforcement, fire department, first responder teams. And our school principals have been working hard on this, and we present the drafts to you tonight.
All right, thank you, Allison. Let's go ahead and open it up first for any sort of clarifying questions. Would like anybody have any? No. I'll go ahead and ask one here, Allison. If so, inside of each of these plans were these CHKS scores, and I'm wondering, is there any sort of, so these are just numbers, and I was just wondering, is there sort of some sort of a comparison or a baseline that we want to compare these numbers to help me sort of interpret these numbers, or how should I be interpreting these numbers that we see?
That's a great question. So we call that our check survey, and we've been using that for some time. We're actually going to suggest at an upcoming meeting that we pivot away from that tool and use our Panorama tool. So we've introduced this new tool this year that we feel is a better fit for our district, and it looks more broadly at what we think about in terms of school safety. So we needed to use the prior checks data because that was what we had, at the time of this writing, but we think there's going to be a more meaningful way to look at this that provides us with a really clear dashboard. We can look at improvement over time, and even for each individual child, how they're feeling and what their areas of strength are. So I would say we probably don't need to spend too much time on the old checks data, but we look forward to bringing you the new tool coming up soon later this spring. It's going to be in one of the March meetings.
Okay, and so these are the safety plans for 2021. So the latest version of this that we have going into 21-22, then we'll have the panorama scores then, it sounds like. Just want to make sure I understand.
Yes, yes. The checks is an every other year survey, and Panorama, we actually are administering it several times a year so that we can see growth within the year. And we'll share with you the components and how we see merging that at an upcoming meeting into this. So we have found the checks data has been useful, so far, and the schools have been working really hard to up the participation while we had it, and we have been using it. So I don't want to understate that. I just think that it also has opened up, more thinking about how this kind of tool can be helpful. And so that's why we're headed towards that pivot soon.
Sounds good. And then the next step here then is just so we'll all go off and talk to our assigned principals to review with them the SIPSA. So with the next, are we looking at a discussion action then at the next one of the future board meetings? So there are opportunities to discuss our findings and take action on this? Is that the
That would be, yes, the next meeting. We'll ask that you take action and we can list it as this type of item again.
Great.
Discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Lori, please.
I have one. I just want to follow on to Jerry's question. So if Panorama, there is currently no state requirement for us. There is no state tool designed to measure growth. So we're choosing to use this to measure growth ourselves, right?
So yes, in the LCAP, we're required to have a school climate tool, and most schools have been using checks for some time.
Right.
We are able to select the tool that fits for us. We'll have some bridging over where we'll still use some of that checks data in the LCAP, and we'll be bridging over to Panorama in this next phase of the LCAP. And then as we transition into the next 3 years, we can talk about what kinds of indicators you'd like to see used in that LCAP. So we do have the choice as long as our tool meets the requirements around sense of belonging and sense of safety at school.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Lori. Leslie, do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not.
All right, great, thanks. And then, so last call for questions here.
One question, since I will also ask.
Okay.
I think, Alison, this one, there are some percentages, right? Like, is there some every year there is a target we work towards, or is it just a raw data, what it is? Like, are we comparing with last year to this year? Or sorry, for example, a student feels safe at school, so kind of, right? Like, let's say 82%, okay? So what does it mean? Is it like, we should have been 90%, because some schools to school, I see that variation, like 72% to 82% and so on, right? So a good thing is that at least most of the things we are, 70 plus kind of, that's a pretty good number. But is there some kind of a target which we put from a district perspective?
We did include some targets in the last LCAP around the specific areas of the checks that we pulled out, and I don't have those in front of me right now. But I think bigger picture, really each school is setting their own targets in their SIPSA and in their school safety plan to make progress, because all of the individual school results are different. So I can put some of those details, the district details in the next executive summary when we come back for this item. And that would be a great question to ask your individual schools, because they're each focused on their individual progress goals related to that.
Okay, got it. Yeah, thanks.
Great.
That's it, Jerry.
All right, thanks, Satish. Anyone else? Last call. All right, I think we're good here then. Thank you, Allison, for the presentation. All right, moving on to item 12.2, discussion on the reopening of schools update. So take it away, Stacy.
Thank you. And I'm actually going to have some of the members of our team are going to chip in and do part of the presentation. But, I think I want to thank and applaud Kate for her opening statements, as, I think she captured so much of it. We have gone through a lot of changes. We've seen just within these last couple of weeks, some of the guidelines shifting. I think we're headed in the right direction in our county. We do need to still be vigilant and, continue to encourage everyone to wear their mask out there. We still believe, we are part of the community and we all work together and we all have that interest of getting our students back to in-person learning as quickly as possible. And it's certainly made some headway. I know that over the last probably 2 weeks in several town hall meetings, there's been frustration and feeling like we're not moving fast enough, and some frustration because we may be moving too fast into it. And really taking all of that information in and remaining with our 4-phase framework. And I think that's been really important too, so that we can have those standards and those metrics developed so that we can move forward. So I know we'll show our 4-phase framework again tonight, and everyone has seen it. We also are going to update where we are with phase 2. There's definitely been the desire and interest to expand what we've been offering under phase 2 as we've been working towards phase 3. We'll do an update on our metrics. Again, I think we had the message at the beginning of the meeting that we've made progress and we're excited to bring forward our metrics and where we are, and then really looking at what is the next step. So we do have some new news to share tonight. So next slide. Again, our 4-phase framework, we're all very familiar with this, no adjustments on that. We are in phase 2 and targeted trying to get to phase 3 as quickly as possible. Next one. So I'm going to ask Allison, excuse me, I think Carrie Ito is going to share. She's been working extensively with getting the sites up and running on their hubs. And one of our tasks over the last couple of weeks have been really trying to expand that. So I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
I can learn to turn on my video and unmute myself. Hi, thank you for having me tonight. I'm just excited to share with you. We have to report back on our phase 2 expansion. We started our back in November with 27 hubs or 27 classrooms open. And after hearing from the board and getting a lot of positive feedback from both the children as well as teachers, as well as families, we have worked towards expanding our hubs. So I'm excited to say before the end of the month and possibly the beginning of March, and I'll explain a little bit, we will then have 44 hubs open. So we are opening at new sites, and you will see down on the bottom that where we are opening new sites and new classrooms based on teacher volunteers that have come forward to open various campuses. The one caveat is Freya is not quite open yet because they have some construction going on their site and they want to make sure that it's safe before they open. But we're really excited about that. I'm not going to go over the data that was shared, but that we've collected, but it is an attachment tonight to the board docs. We collected data about our phases, and we got really positive feedback from both students in the middle school, as well as the elementary school, as well as our families. The children are all reporting for the most part that the hubs are really helping them get their work done. They're really excited to be back on campus, really mainly for their friendship, having a quiet place to work, being able to see people other than their families and their closest units. They're excited to be able to expand that and see their teachers. So parents' overall support for the program was just being very thankful for the district moving forward with that and providing that support for our kids. So for the most part, what we're pushing towards as we are continuing with our hubs is to filling them to capacity. It's an evolving number where kids exit and new kids add based on family circumstances, et cetera. So our new capacity, when all of our hubs are open and running, will be up to 556 maximum capacity. And that's pretty much filling up our classrooms, right? And we're keeping our classroom limits to 14. So we are just really excited to share that news with you guys.
Thanks, Carrie. This next slide, again, everyone has seen it, and we're just trying to keep everybody up to date. The adjusted case rates are adjusted every Tuesday and then posted on the county website dashboard on Wednesdays. We continue to monitor that. It is encouraging. We are dropping that adjusted case rate number, not probably as fast as we'd like to, but it does help us determine on where we can potentially project where we or when we would fall into another color tier. Right now, we are still sitting in purple with the 21.5 adjusted case rate, and then would need to drop all the way down to 7 before it moves into the red. But again, a lot of positive, I think, is going on in the community right now. We're hearing the encouraging word that vaccines are being increased as to the accessibility of them. So I think we are moving in the right direction and moving us forward. So I know everyone wants to get to the metrics. So we actually are going to have Allison, Carrie, and Leslie will share parts of the metrics.
Okay, so I think I am starting with metric 1 and 2. And so what we wanted to do is provide you an update on where we are with the metrics and some things that we are recommending and suggesting that we adjust. And so the first metric, this is one that we've been in conversation with, and Kate alluded to this with our CEA team. In regards to, there is a strong desire and interest from our staff, our teachers, and other staff to be able to come back onto campus to support student learning on a more regular basis. And so we would like to shift the metric to a red tier with all staff at the school site having had the opportunity to receive a vaccination at the recommended dosage, or the orange tier. And so that is one of our metric shifts. We are not quite in the red tier yet as a county. We're getting really close as our numbers go down. And we do, we're optimistic that Santa Clara County will increase their capacity to be able to get vaccinations for educators. And actually it's all employees of a school district. And so it's not just our teaching staff, but it is employees of a school district. Our metric 2 has to do with our staffing levels. And so one of the first things that we did was looking at our parent commitments. We sent a message out to the community today, or I'm sorry, on Monday, in regards to, we have collected their commitments. We know which families want distance learning only and which have a desire to have their children return in some sort of a hybrid. Our IT team, amazing, and Allison and our school principals are working at looking how does that play out in each classroom, at an elementary school classroom, or in each class or each period or section at a middle school. And so we have almost finalized looking at that data so that we can determine what is our capacity in a hybrid model. We also know that with the support and partnership from our staff, our teachers, and our substitutes that we have in place, that right now we are currently fully staffed. We have very few leave requests at this point, and we hope that continues. And so right now, if we were to open tomorrow, we would be fully staffed and be able to move forward should we meet that first metric. We also will and continue to work with staff in regards to any types of leaves or accommodations based on what is outlined in our bargaining contracts. And we are well underway with testing our employees at no cost. We currently do it on a monthly basis. It's being held at our district offices and at each school site for all employees. And our goal is to increase the frequency. And what we do know is if an individual employee were to come forward and say, I really want to get tested an additional time, we would be able to swiftly accommodate that request. And so that's where we are with metric 1 and 2.
I'm back. I'm here to talk about metric 3. Just wanted to let you know that we are well on our way and have completed all the certifications needed for our Santa Clara County Health Department. If you were looking for evidence of that, it would be the green apples that you're seeing up in our school windows, as well as a COVID checklist. So those mandatory documents basically share with our community as well as others that we have taken into the consideration all the necessary precautions that need to go in place. That goes anywhere from face masking to discussing social distancing and hand hygiene and all those types of metrics. And we have completed those and they're up and ready to go. The other areas that we've also worked on is we have other mandatory documents that we have to also provide for the state. And there's a bi-weekly mandatory document that gets submitted to talk about our reopening. That is also complete and ready, and we're up and running in that area. We have completed, as far as metrics goes, for health and safety on our campuses. We have done all of our ventilation requirements and checking in of our rooms and our spaces. We are ready to go as far as that goes. And then we've also working on our Cal OSHA checklist. So our main checklist is completed, and we have one last checklist that was updated in January, and it is very close to being completed. The last part of that is making sure that we get the feedback based on our reopening plans from both our parent communities as well as our unions. And so we have shared that in our district advisory committee and our parent advisory committees. And so we're gathering feedback on that and making sure we make adjustments. And then we are meeting with the union when we come back from break, the 3 unions, to consult with them, and then that will be done. So we will be ready, hopefully, with some modifications if we need to make them by February 25th is our goal. We have also some internal checklists. So based on all the reopening things, we have created some internal checklists so that help people wrap their brains around the work that needs to happen in school sites. And so those have all been shared and they're being worked on at our school sites. And we feel very strong that we will be up, ready, and prepared with each of our classrooms and our school settings. Those checklists are mainly around like social distancing, making sure that everybody understands the desks have to be 6 feet apart, or seats need to be 6 feet apart, that the teacher's desk or teaching area needs to be 6 feet away from children, that we have face mask protocols and what do we do, and that we have face masks ready. So all of that is up and ready to go. PPEs at each of our sites. We've gone above and beyond, making sure that we're providing desk divider shields for students. We have enough face masks for both kids and adults. We have face shields for extra protected for adults. We've got gowns, so we are ready as far as all that goes. So we're really excited to share that metric with you. So as far as metric 3 goes, we are ready for state guidelines, and both county and state guidelines, we're ready to go and ready to submit those. So we're well on the way in that area. And then in metric 4, as we shared, one of the exciting things that we can share with you is we have not had a single outbreak or a single positive case that has shown up in our schools in the 27 hub sites that have been open. And those have been open since November. So we're excited to share that we have not had any COVID cases from that. And we feel content and okay about all that, and we're excited to share that. So the safety measures that we're putting in place, and it's really, and the emphasis is in all areas is masking, hand washing, and social distancing. And we are really making sure that we take care of those 3 things. And then the last thing is, just again, the positive feedback and the participation, and that we feel like we've addressed the concerns from our community. It was a very strong feeling that our schools that are open, they feel safe, and families and students feel safe to be there. So that's our success for our current phase that we're in. I'll turn it over to, I think, Allison.
Yes, so this is our revised assessment dates for assessing progress towards metrics. At the last meeting, you asked for us to increase the frequency, and so we adjusted the dates and the cadence of this. So what we're looking at here is an every 2 weeks flow of looking at the metrics. Most of those dates are lined up with our board meetings, which felt like a natural time when we're all together to assess progress, as we have been doing at each meeting. The only adjustment to that is the March 23rd date. And the reason for that is when we're looking at that first assessment date, what we're doing is we're looking 2 weeks out from that for staff to return, giving our staff notice to prepare to return to campus. And then including a few days to be sure that we're reviewing all the safety protocols and making sure final site preparations are in place prior to the students returning. And so that flow works well through the first 3 windows there that we see. And then the final date there, we chose March 23rd so that we would be able to have enough days for staff to return prior to the April break, to be able to have that time to do final preparations on campus before the interruption of the break. So that's why that March 23rd is not on a board meeting date. And then at the bottom, the other adjustment that we made here is, you know, in prior meetings, we had said that we felt that going beyond April 1st would be challenging. And we're really rethinking that now as time goes by, and you know, we're hearing feedback and considering the needs of our students. We really feel strongly that we need to keep looking closely on this cadence and doing everything we can to try to get our students back in person this year, even if that's not possible until later in the spring. So if we were not able to achieve that goal on any of these dates, we would bring further dates to you so that we could keep looking for that opportunity and working towards bringing students back to campus as soon as possible. So in terms of our next steps, we are continuing to expand phase 2, as Carrie noted. We plan to communicate the expanded assessment dates as well as the plans for phase 3. We didn't talk about our schedules tonight, but we will be coming back to that topic at the next board meeting. We'll continue to monitor the metrics, and we also are in preparation for phase 3, thinking about those other types of things that we know are important to our students and our families and our teachers and other staff. Updating our protocols to make it possible for things like school pictures, outdoor field trips, end of year activities, and updating our manuals so that we're ready to address those types of things once we get to phase 3. We also are preparing plans for summer learning for students, and we'll be updating you at the next board meeting. And then, of course, it's this time of year where we're looking ahead to fall, and we are eager to get to phase 4, full return of students. And that is the goal that we're aiming towards, hoping that restrictions are lifted. And we also know that some families may want a distance learning only choice next school year. And so we're planning with that in mind as well.
Thank you, Allison. And I think I just wanted to add in that appreciation as we've expanded the hub to hubs. Our classified staff, principals, and all of our teachers, really a huge thank you for all of them, because it really has been a very collaborative work and attempt by everyone. So with that, we will stop and take any questions or conversations and discussion.
All right, well, thanks, Leslie, Carrie, Allison, and Stacy. Well, quite a team effort here. So we'll do maybe a couple of rounds of clarifying questions among the board members before going out for public, before taking public comments. Who'd like to go first?
Okay, I will go.
All right, thank you, Satish. Please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, I think the team, this is a tremendous improvement. Thank you very much. And probably at least 3 of my major concerns have been already addressed in this, like last 2 meetings, which I have been talking. So, which I'll talk probably later what exactly those things are. And I can see a tremendous progress in those areas. Thank you for working on that. Okay. Specific to the questions, what I have is on the metrics, like if you go, let me go here, the metric 2, right? The staffing level. So basically I see that all these things have a direct link to metric 1, right? So when we say it is green, that is we have staffing, right, for the classroom and support staff fully in place. This has a direct link to metric 1, right? If metric 1, if you meet, only this also comes in picture. Am I reading it right? Or how do I interpret that? Because we know that when we say we have staff in place, but we are not able to start something, right? What does it mean? And I guess that is because it's a metric 1, right?
Right. So yeah, so the way we look at it is that currently We have all of our classrooms fully staffed. And I think the one piece that is unknown is that if and when we reopen in red tier with vaccinations or orange tier, if that will change. What I can tell you is our Human Resources Department has talked with staff that have had safety concerns or concerns about returning to work. And many of them were dependent upon the vaccination. And so that red tier and vaccination dosage available, et cetera, will, we believe, be a positive shift for us, because that is one thing that our teachers do feel will help them feel safer upon return.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I answered you.
Yeah, I got it. So basically, you're saying that we have, if you meet that metric 1, like a red tier and the vaccine or the orange tier, we have an agreement practically from all the staff that they can work on, right? So that's what it is. We will not have to go back and see it again. Practically, we have everybody in place there.
At this point, I can say yes, but what I can't do is I cannot predict what a staff member may do. If a staff member may change their mind because something in their circumstance has shifted. And if that is to happen, and a staff member changes their mind or has a need or needs some sort of modification or accommodation, our Human Resources Department will work with them to the best of our ability to accommodate so that we can continue to remain in green.
Okay. Second thing is from the feedback from the hubs right now, right? So I know that I know Carrie said that we don't have we are not heard, or we don't have anything bad. Everything went pretty well. So how is it general because we have a lot of teachers already involved in this right now, doing the hubs, and hubs we have been tremendously, I think, in terms of numbers we are going up, and even the participation also growing. So what's the general feedback from the teachers, like who involved in this hub?
Carrie, do you want to address that? I know that we had pulled some of those slides out and just shared them as an extra set of slides, but do you want to give maybe an overview of the feedback that was received on the hubs?
So the general feedback from we conducted most of the feedback from the children as well as the parents. And so we didn't specifically call out for each individual child because it would be dependent on each classroom. It's their homeroom base, right? And so we really looked at, is the hub helping you get your work done? Is your help is in those types of questions and work completion. And so all the children, for the most part, said, yes, it's helping them get their work done. They're getting help. For many of our, especially our elementary school children, they learned how to get on to their, when they started, many of them came, they didn't know how to sign on to into their portals. They didn't know how to access their Google Classroom. So going to the hub provided them the opportunity that somebody could sit there and personally teach them how to do that, right? So they're able to complete more work both while they're at school as well as at home. And so we really went off the feedback of the children, not so much specifically site staff, because the site staff that is working, right, are not necessarily their classroom teachers currently.
Okay, and each hub is how many kids approximately?
So it depends on how many classrooms are open. So each hub has the potential to have up to 14 children in them.
Okay. Thank you. Jerry, I'll wait for my next round.
All right, thank you, Satish. Anyone like to go next? Lori, Phyllis, or Sylvia? Okay, please.
Follow on that same slide, Jerry.
So Lori, go ahead, please. Yeah.
On the phase 2, so we had talked last time about trying to expand those groups and to really start to capture our kiddos falling below benchmark and or non-passing grades. Do we have a sense of, so in that, I know you say 440 and growing with a capacity up to 556, will we be able to capture fully and offer to with that capacity right now, that target group, or are we still looking at needing to expand further?
So our target group, which was our initial target group with the 3 tiers, we were able to offer to every single child. That has always been since we started. So since we began and we opened in phase 2, we were able to offer it to every child that met those 3 buckets. That doesn't mean that every family is taking advantage of it. Right. But we can certainly offer it. So what we have done in our phase, as we continue and we've expanded, we are now going to our next highest needs kids that are filling at least 2 of those buckets. Have we gone through every single one of those kids? Absolutely not, but I think at the sites that they're opening, yes. And so you're going to see some more concentrated effort at specific sites where they're able to really expand and within their own classrooms. But I think we're pretty close. I mean, that's the same thing as we're gaining and we're learning more information and SSTs are happening and our sites are meeting about kids' needs. We're really looking to find an opening and placing them in one of our hubs. So we haven't had to turn children away that absolutely need that kind of support that's come up through like student IST process, student support, SST process. We've been able to support all those kids. So it hasn't been that. And then we've, in incidents, it might take a couple weeks to get there. So as we are adjusting and noticing that certain kids are not able to come regularly, even when we provide them busing, et cetera, then we end up opening up a spot and inviting a new child there. So we definitely are able to, support the kids that are in most need, that families agree to come.
Okay, that's helpful. So, and if we needed to continue to grow that capacity, we would look at that once we've filled these available spots.
I think if we filled all 556 spots, yeah, I think we could look at growing that capacity. But remember in this phase, it's still based on teacher volunteers, right? And so, even as we spoke, we were getting up to last week, late part of last week, we were still adding hubs as people are talking to teachers. Teachers are feeling more comfortable. The metrics are going down. They're seeing the conditions based on board slide presentations of what is being set. People are starting to volunteer. And so I think, we're doing the best that we can as far as opening and encouraging staff. But as staff are still feeling more comfortable, we are seeing us opening more and more sites.
Okay, so then, thank you, Carrie. And then, so my second one, I'm not sure if this is a Carrie question or an Allison question or a Stacy question, but what is our thinking right now as when we are able to get to our phase 3 opening? Are we keeping our phase 2 Wednesday hubs? Do we have a thinking around that right now for that extra support? Or are we thinking we'll expand that in a different way or address it in a different way?
I can answer that one. So we're thinking that for the elementary schools, we would not continue it because we need to be in that stable group mode that's specified in the guidance, right? So once the kids come to their classroom, then their stable group would be their classroom. And so we'll just build in the extra support on the schedule. For middle school, we think that we can still keep that operating because the way that stable groups are looked at in middle school is a little bit different. So that's our current thinking.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. I'll wait for the next round, Jerry. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Phyllis, I think I saw your hand up earlier, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first one is for Carrie. Carrie, we're getting emails from parents who are saying, things like, my kids have always been successful in school. They've always been, gotten reasonably good grades. Distance learning just isn't working for them and they're kind of falling off the edge and they're earning D's and F's. So my question is, where in the queue do those kids fall? They're probably not special ed. They might not be candidates for the student study team. What kind of support are we able to give those, or are we not there yet?
I think we are having, in those capacities when when those people have reached out to school sites, they actually are having students study teams and making decisions if there's room in their hub to accommodate that child, or is there something else that they need to do to help support them?
Okay, good. Thank you. And the other question I think is for Allison. I know one of the alternative programs we're going to offer in the fall is distance learning. But I also think, and I have said this many times before, I think our home study program is really good. And I think it's another alternative that we should be encouraged. If parents don't want to send their kids back to school, and they're not happy with distance learning, I think the home study program is a really nice, different alternative for them. So I hope we're able to share that with our parents, that that's just one more choice that our parents have to help with, to get through this. So that's it. That was not a question. That was just a FYI from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, Jerry. I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis. Sylvia, would you like to go?
Sure, but actually, Lori and Satish took both of my questions, but I will ask another one. On slide 6, so I guess it's a question for, I think, Allison. First of all, just, thank you so much for the work that you guys have done in making these negotiations with both to CEA and our unions and the negotiation team. I know it's been hours and hours of just really productive and long conversations. So thank you for all that behind the scenes work and really just working towards common ground. I had a question about the COVID testing available for employees at no cost. I just wanted clarification on that. When you say no cost, is that no cost to them, no cost to us, or no cost to whom?
Yeah, that would be me. So there is no out-of-pocket cost. But what ends up happening is the agency does bill the insurance company. And so there's no copay for our employees. Yet the money that we have, it ends up becoming part of our usage rate as we look into the next year.
Okay.
If that makes sense, but there's no out-of-pocket costs. Could it affect our rates as we move into next year? Possibly, but we do believe that it is an absolute necessity to be able to provide this for our employees.
And is that different than, because I know the majority of our staff, are employed through Kaiser, but then we know that we're doing, or that with Levi Stadium opening up and, some of these other places opening up, how does that change things, or what is that? What kind of difference does that make, if it makes any difference at all?
It probably doesn't really make any difference. So our employees can go to their healthcare providers also. And then when we look at our rates, when we renew rates each year, it really is just a usage rate. So it doesn't matter if they're using a service from our health providers, either at the Kaiser facility or through, or through PAM for wherever they go, or whether or not they're using it through our curative testing.
Okay. Oh, yes. Sorry. I was mixing up the vaccines with the testing. Yes.
With Curative. Yeah. And Curative is the agency that we're working with to provide us with the kits and the results that our employees receive.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Sylvia. Okay, let's stay on this with my 2 questions. The first one I think is for Leslie, and I wanted to better understand metric 1 here, in particular where it says opportunity, eligibility, and access to be vaccinated. What does access mean in this context? Because it's not something, right, that we provide. So could you explain a bit about the intent behind this wording here? What is, I think eligibility means we're in priority 1B. I think I get that, but what's access?
Yeah, access would actually have to do with the ability to access the vaccination. So we know right now in Santa Clara County, they are working tirelessly to get to the place where they are able to provide vaccinations for educators or employees of educational systems. And so that's exactly what the access is. Right now, it's available to individuals that are, 75 years of age or older. I don't know what the tier is that they are on currently. We're sort of next in line. And so it would be when we are notified by Santa Clara County or our organizations such as Kaiser that vaccinations are ready. It typically takes, after you've signed up and you've gotten your first vaccination, it's 4 weeks later, I believe, until your second dosage. And so we want to make sure that there's this window of time that we know, yes, our employees can have the ability to go and get a vaccination, have their first and second dose so that they are ready to go.
Got it. So
Right
these,
now, it's not accessible.
right. Okay. So it's then more than access, then it's really access and then being vaccinated, the 2 dosages. And I think the second one is 3 or 4 weeks after the first one. So the metric would be considered met when they've had their second dosage, a month after.
Well, it would be met once they've had their second dose, but
Okay.
we will have some employees that choose not to get vaccinated. So we're not going to wait for every employee to be vaccinated to reopen. What we're going to wait for is to make sure that we can, we are confident that any employee that wanted to receive a vaccination has had that opportunity.
Okay, so if we were to, for instance, tomorrow, we drop into that eligibility, then it would be the first dosage, 4 weeks later, second dosage, and that's when the metric would be considered to have been met.
Correct. And there's a small waiting period after that we'll need to get some more specifics on. But yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
great. All right. All right, thanks. And my second question then, it's more for Stacy, I guess, and it's not really on here, but I wanted to understand a bit more about some of our adjacent school districts that are adjacent to us, Sunnyvale, I think there are 5 or 6. So could you talk a bit about how our metric, this proposed metric here, compares to the ones that have been adopted by some of our neighboring districts? And I guess in particular, I'm interested in Sunnyvale just because we both feed into Fremont Union. So if you could share what we know about what others are doing here.
I would be happy to, and I can share that the general consensus around our surrounding districts, that many of them are making the shift and saying in a red tier, some element of red tier, whether it's would return to in-person 2 weeks after the red tier or in red tier. Specifically for Sunnyvale, they have declared that they will begin to return to in-person instruction 2 weeks after the county has shifted into red tier. They've actually been a little bit unique in the situation where they have a lower percentage of parents who have indicated they want to come back in person, and they're actually doing a reshuffling. So one of the areas I think that we've heard from our community is that our students remaining with their teachers, they're actually doing a rescheduling, reshuffling. So students may have different teachers as they're coming back, but it does allow them to come back a little bit sooner and meet the needs. I can share with you, I know that Los Altos, Saratoga, Los Gatos, Palo Alto are 4 surrounding districts that have been back in person and are probably in front of the other districts. We also have a couple districts that have declared that they wouldn't be coming back. Again, I think now as things have shifted with the county and the guidelines, and there really is, I think a lot of movement and wanting to get students to back in person, I would see more of the district shifting into this red with a availability of vaccines being part of their criteria.
Okay. Do you know Sunnyvale also has, I know this red tier with vaccine is part of the, I think the recommendations from the state unions at that level, the white paper they released a few days ago. Do you know Sunnyvale is also consistent with that in terms of having sort of this vaccine as part of the metric?
They don't currently have that as part of their metrics. Theirs is just once the county moves into the red tier and remains in 2 weeks in the red tier, then they would return to the in-person.
Great, thank you. Okay, those are my 2 questions. I presume we want to go around again, it sounds like. There are folks, yes, okay. Then let's go around. Satish, if you could go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll make a quick one. So this is again back to Carrie. I like her a lot, so I keep asking questions to her. Okay, Carrie, like it's like again the capacity, right? So we are talking about 556, very interesting place. So is that, I heard you saying that it's like, it's based on the available staff, right? So is it, so what, volunteer staff you said, so, and it's of course the subs also added here, right? Is there a room for us? Is it that is what it is determining, or let's say we have 1,000 kids wants to come. Is there a way for us to get into that level, like having more subs, or have you thought about that, or there's a clear restriction around this numbers?
So we are relying on volunteer staff as well as substitutes to run our hubs right now. And all the subs that are willing to come and work in person with our kids, for the most part, are with us right now. So the subs that we've worked with that have agreed, because we've contacted them, that have been willing to come and do in-person learning with us, are with us right now. And then the remaining staff, or what we've been really able to open with, are our teachers that are coming forward who are willing to look past the metric and say, I'm ready to come back to support kids. So it really is based on volunteers and based on the current MOU in phase 2. So we are honoring that as a school district. And so we don't want to force anybody to come into work, right? So, but we're not in that space right now, because as you can see, we have about 440 kids that are in our hubs right now, and we have room to grow. So if we need to, there are spaces available to grow. So I think if we were at a 556 capacity and we had no way to wiggle room, then, we might, do a little begging, but we're not there yet. I feel like we're in a good position as far as that goes.
So, but if needed, we can go further, like based on the more people are ready to volunteer.
Oh yeah, as schools are ready and people are volunteering, we are not turning anybody away. So we are doing our best to work with school principals as well as teachers that are ready to open. So we are doing our best. In fact, there's a couple hubs that we've adjusted the hours a little bit to accommodate their site schedules, etc. So we're doing whatever we can. If a teacher comes forward and says that they want to run their classroom, we are doing everything we possibly can to accommodate that so that they can be open. So no, we're not turning any staff away from being able to open up a hub at their school site.
Okay, so in the same line, while talking to a lot of community members, there are a lot of people express their interest in volunteering, right? So they can help us out, kind of thing. Did we think on that, or is it possible? Is it doable? I don't know whether I can ask this question here or I can ask it separately, but there are people willing to help us out. Okay, like I'm purely from the volunteer perspective. Okay, and did we think anything around that?
So we're currently not using volunteers, although we are starting to look at it and the ability to have volunteers, probably not in classrooms, but helping in other areas of our school district as we move into phase 3. We currently aren't allowing volunteers, and that is really based on state and county guidelines. They basically said limit the volunteers. So, and typically we wouldn't have a parent volunteer run a classroom of kids without supervision of a certificated employee, right? So, that limits us too. So, and basically our state guidelines right now really do limit us. They basically are asking us still to limit the volunteers to really essential work.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Jerry, that's all I have.
Thanks, Satish. Lori, please go ahead.
Okay, and I'm staying on our phase 2 for this round too, for the start. So our hubs currently are staffed partly by volunteer teachers who for their other 4 days a week are doing their distance learning with their standard class, I don't know what to call it, with their class. But on Wednesdays, they're taking extra time to staff a hub. But we're also staffing some of our hubs with substitutes who have been willing to come back for us from our sub pool, either long-term or short-term sub pool, right?
Correct.
Is there any opportunity for the subs for us to expand the number of days of the week that we're offering hubs for, again, going back to that original tier 3 group, highest needs? Because some of the feedback I have received has been that the Wednesdays are great, and we could still use more to really reach our highest needs kids. So I'm wondering if there's any room with at least that sub pool that's willing to come back to explore that at all. Have we thought about that at all? Are there logistics that make that a flat out no versus something we could look into?
I'm going to turn that to either Stacy or Allison to answer.
Sorry, guys.
And I can partially comment on that also, is our subs are also subbing on Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays.
Yes.
So the challenge with that is if we had, if we knew we weren't using them on a daily basis, potentially yes. But we do have a core group of subs that we are assigning just because people have reasons that they are not able to do their synchronous and asynchronous daily lessons.
Right, and that's the group that's gone through our professional development and is
Correct. Yeah.
all geared up to do our distance learning. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I continue to worry about those high needs kids. So anything else we can do to expand that group, the time that group is getting, you know, the learning loss and that highest needs is still from an equity standpoint, still a priority for me. So then I guess for my second one, I will skip down. Let's see. Jerry, are we going to be able to do another round?
We can poll the group. I think if there's the majority that wants to do another round, we can do that. This is important.
Okay, I'll go to my next highest priority one then. How's that? So slide, what is it, 8. The new bullet down at the bottom, if we have not returned to campus by mid-April, so we're shifting from April 1st to mid-April. I'm trying to, you know, pull information from all the different sources I'm getting. And in our update today with the county superintendent, we heard that the latest information she's getting from the county is hopefully, fingers crossed, depending on what the feds give us, maybe 2 to 3 more weeks before they're expanding Tier 1B into educators. And so if I play out the dates of knowing that not everybody's going to be able to be vaccinated the first week unless our county somehow prioritizes opening up a specific site that's only for educators, which don't worry, I asked for that. But even if they don't, not everybody's going to get their vaccine in the first week, right? And then we've still got the time until the second vaccine and then the time afterwards for the waiting period before you would be considered fully inoculated. Is there fully vaccinated, I guess is the better term. Inoculation's a little different. But at any rate, I overlay that on this mid-April date, and this still makes me nervous to say for sure mid-April. And so I guess that's just some feedback I'd give, is that I hope we can continue to be flexible on that, and continue to kind of think about that and update that as we see how the vaccine piece plays with the color tiers piece, plays with you know, our goals, which is to return to in-person learning, you know, in some form this year. So I hope that's not the last time we see it, is I guess all I'm saying there.
So maybe I can offer some clarification on that too. We really wanted to bullet that to highlight, because previously we had said April 1st was kind of that shut off that we, you know, if we weren't there, we were going to ask for distance learning. What we're implying here is that we're going to continue all the way through until June. We're going to take every opportunity to get our students back to in-person. So if we haven't been by mid-April, we'll just continue to add 2-week assessment dates all the way through to the end of the year, because we really do see the value and the need to get our students back for in-person this spring, because that is going to help as we begin moving into our phase 4 in the fall and having pieces in place, hopeful phase 4 in the fall. You know, that is our goal. So just to clarify on that, that is our intent to continue throughout.
Thank you. That's exactly what I needed to hear. All right. So then I'll wait, Jerry. I have a couple more, but I can.
Thanks, Lori. And then Phyllis, do you have any?
Just like Satish, I like Carrie a lot too, but I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And then Sylvia, would you like to go next, please?
Stacey, I appreciated or Jerry, I appreciated your question about Sunnyvale, because I know that that's something that I've been looking at as well, since they are the other feeder school for the high school district. I think several of us were on that Santa Clara County School Boards Association meeting this afternoon, and we were listening, kind of talking with the other school boards about what the different districts are doing. Stacey, I know that you're in meetings with the other superintendents in our county as well. I'm interested, especially in some of our other neighbors, like our nearby neighbors like Saratoga and Los Altos, because I know that we get a lot of feedback from our community because they're right next door, well, to pockets of our community. And so do do you happen to know what those details are? You knew the Sunnyvale one so well. I would love to hear, like, if you happen to know the details of some of these other ones, because I know that, you know, every plan is a little different, and it was good to hear, you know, how the Sunnyvale one is, you know, not quite aligned with what we were what our community was looking for in terms of keeping teachers together with students. It'd be good to hear what's going on with some of these other ones, if you happen to know.
I can share the information that I have. I know with Los Gatos, they just recently returned, so they're having AB models. On February 1st, they had their K2 started at 6th grade, and then on Monday, I believe they brought their 3rd through 5th, so they have their complete K-8 back to in person on an AB model. Saratoga, they brought their TK 2nd graders back on February 10th. They're going to be bringing their 3rd and 5th graders back on February 24th. And then if the county does go into the red tier, they're actually looking at bringing back middle school students March 1st. So they're one of the few that are really targeting the middle schools and moving them forward. Santa Clara Unified, they are still one of the districts that are staying in, not return until in the orange. Los Altos, they have been in a hybrid K6 model since October, November, probably, if not sooner than that. And then they are looking at, once the county shifts into the red and remain in red for the 5 days, they'll reopen for 7th and 8th graders coming back. Campbell Elementary is returning in red tier 5 days after, I believe the county switches into red. They'll be returning 5 days. Los Altos, I'm not sure, did I say Los Altos already? I can check here and see. Union School District announced they would be in the red tier February 22nd, bringing back TK in 2nd grade, looking at bringing back their 3rd and 5th graders in March 8th. So I think there's been a lot of adjustments in all of the school schedules over this last 2 weeks, as we're seeing that shift from our case numbers going down, the ability to bring back the students in person. We also are hearing that there may be some updated guidelines coming out here in the next week with Governor Newsom making some further shifts. So we're anxiously awaiting to hear what that's going to look like as well.
And when you say bring back, like, it's not full reopen, right? You're talking about something similar to what our phase 3 hybrid.
Most of them are doing some kind of an AB model, or they will have a split in students that want to stay in the distance learning. They're all continuing in distance learning, and they may be bringing back small cohorts.
I see. Okay. All right. Thanks. The other question I had was actually on slide 9. And I was actually excited to look at some of these possible activities for the end of the school year. Outdoor field trips, end of year activities. I'm just curious, like, you know, what does that potentially look like, and, you know, how do we envision that happening? Do we have any ideas of what that might look like right now?
And I might shift and ask Carrie, because I know Carrie's worked on developing and working with the school pictures. That's been something, this is our typical time.
So we're, as far as outdoor field trips are concerned, we've had teachers requesting the ability to do an outdoor field trip. And so what we're doing right now is we're setting the conditions that would need to be put in place following current district field trip guidelines, as well as making sure that the COVID health and safety measures are put in place. And so we're working towards the work that needs to be going on. So basically we're setting the foundation so that when we do get back in school, if a teacher wanted to go, let's say, to an outdoor field trip to, I don't know, Sanborn Park, and that was an availability, that they could work on that with the guidelines that we're putting in place. To do that, it would mean that the teacher probably would not take their entire class on a given day, right? It would be broken up into groups, right? So that we could keep the small cohorting and then the social distancing guidelines. Like, we don't want to take 30 kids on a field trip where you have to be 6 feet apart. I mean, you're talking about 180 feet between the teacher and the child, the last child in the line. So we're trying to set those conditions based on our current guidelines, et cetera, and trying to maybe facilitate some of that. Of course, that will be, based on, teachers and their comfort level and wanting to do part of that, but we definitely wanted to start looking into that. Same thing, picture days and pictures, yearbooks are a big thing, and families really want to hold on to that. They're missing that little space on the wall for my kid in the 5th grade, right? Or my child in the 4th grade. So we are working with we've put together a protocol that we can begin sharing with our photographers. We're starting with our middle schools right now. We're in conversation, making sure that we get those set, and then we will expand to the elementary schools. We're just starting those conversation. And then as well as, end of the typical end of the year activities and what parameters we need to put in place. So what we're trying to do is not tell everybody no, but to set the conditions so that if you do choose to do it, the health and safety conditions are there. Because what we need to do is, in all those things that we typically normally do in a school setting, we need to look through it in the lens of the COVID health and safety and those guidelines. And so we're really looking towards those. So as teachers or groups of people are coming to us about different ideas, I'm working with my nursing team to develop more and more protocols. So it really has been a huge teamwork effort between our nurses who will go out and do the research to find out what's the safest guidelines to put in place for our COVID preparedness and health and safety for our district, and then working with staff on what is it. So pictures, people have been asking for pictures all year. So we're really looking forward to being able to, work with our photographers. Most of our photographers, they have also completed the COVID check mark that we talked about in the metrics. So they have to have their things in place also. So we're just setting our guidelines. And then there's those nuances, right? It's a little bit easier to have a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader go on campus and get a picture taken than a TKer, right? So what conditions would we set? You're not going to send a TKer aimlessly by themselves onto a campus, right? And so do we work with our photographers to set up like a curbside photo opportunity? So we're working through those pieces so that we can extend and bring some of that normal part of school back. And that's what we're hoping to do as we reopen our schools, to also be able to offer some of that too.
I see. That makes sense. That's exciting. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Sylvia. Okay. Let's see, I'll do my 2 questions here. If we go back to slide 8, please, the one on the assessment dates. So I'm trying to connect some of the dots here, right? And so I think what I understood from Leslie is that, I guess I'm looking at this and thinking that we pretty much are going to fail most of these assessment dates, right? Because let's say, assume that we have the vaccine tomorrow, it's going to be a month plus a few days for it to meet the metric. So that means we're not going to meet the first 3 assessment dates. And then I think, as Lori and Sylvia alluded to, we talked about the county board, school board meeting today, that they're thinking maybe 3 weeks when it becomes available. And so even the March 23rd one becomes a little bit suspect. So am I not interpreting this right? It seems like under metric 1, the way we have it now, then we pretty much wouldn't really get back till late April, early May. If we somehow even met the May 23rd one, we wouldn't get back till April 19th. So am I not seeing something? It seems like most of these dates we're not going to be able to make, or am I misinterpreting this somehow?
I think that was why we added in these additional dates, so that we could have the frequent assessment. And, under the red tier, I think the other side of entering into the red tier and increasing the number of vaccination, we may get to the orange tier faster. So we may actually meet the metric by reaching orange tier faster than we do the red. It really is going to determine on how quickly we get those vaccines available to staff. Again, it's sounding positive from what we're hearing from the county public health. I know that they're certainly trying to add the sites. It really is the vaccine availability. So we could be looking at a 5 to 6 weeks out from on before we are back in person.
All right. And then related to this, and on the assessment dates, why wouldn't we just have it trigger when the criteria are met, rather than aligning them with board meetings? It seems like, what's the thinking behind that? I guess it seems like you don't need us to make a decision. These are fairly quantitative metrics. So have you thought about just not having assessment dates, and when they're met, that's when it triggers? Or
That has been a point of our discussion and wanted some feedback from you as a board. Originally, we'd established these because it did align with our metrics and wanting to come back and to reevaluate. But because we now have some pretty clear metrics, we know what we're aiming for. It really is the orange or the red with the vaccine availability. This was a way to provide the notification. We've tried to keep everybody, informed throughout the community, and we know that board meetings, we send out the communication. If there is an interest in adjusting, I don't know that by eliminating these assessment dates, we really wouldn't change our metrics criteria, or when we come back, we would just have this was a way of setting a firm date, I think, to return, was the ease of the assessment dates. If I
Got it. Thanks, Stacy. Those are my two. Is there interest in going around? I'm happy to go around. Lori, sounds like you had some other questions, but maybe let me just check everybody in order here. Satish, did you have two more you wanted, or one or two more you wanted to ask?
I can actually wait, but since if you're going around, I can just
Sure.
ask one question.
Sure.
Okay. So one is, I think the assessment, right? Regarding the assessment, who is doing the real assessment, right? So I know that we have some metrics, and who all make that, whether it's a green or red or whatever it is, the color change, right? Who all involved in the decision making? Can you please explain for the benefit of everybody?
Sure. And actually I'll have Allison talk a little bit, because developing the planning teams where the input comes in, and Carrie leads a team, Allison leads a team, Jeff leads the team with Carrie and Leslie. And so all of that information on their Friday meets, they gather. Some of them are simple to mark. The red tier or the orange tier is rather easy for us to mark. And so it is just a collaborative team effort when we're looking at the metrics. Carrie, again, has been really instrumental in the work with the campuses to ensure their checklists are done once they receive the Apple. So a lot of that is the data that we're supplying into the dashboard that shows our campuses are ready as well.
Yeah, so just I think the continuation is it like I know that some parent groups also involved in that. Just I'm curious to know about that. You discuss with them as well, right? DLAC and all that.
Yes. So Allison has met with DLAC and as far as going over all the safety. So we do get feedback from them. And again, that's used because every Monday we do an update for the county as to what our status is, and it goes onto the county dashboard as well. So there's a lot of different metrics that are put into place now that help us hold ourselves accountable and do our checklists.
Thank you, Stacy. Jerry, that's it.
All right, thanks. And then Lori, please go ahead.
Okay, so I think my first one is really quick. Slide 7, the campus readiness metric. So I know parents have heard a lot in the news about the California Department of Public Health dropping guidance after Newsom came out. And I think there's some concern out there about getting through the required certifications. And I just want to do a little game of Jeopardy to make sure that when we're checking off the all school sites certified by Santa Clara County Public Health, that is the step that gets us the CDPH certification, so to speak, and completing our site district checklist with the date of the February 25th. At that point, we meet all the current criteria under campus readiness. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then on the final slide, slide 9, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves at all, but it's a question that has come up a lot in the last week. And the way the question usually goes is, I'm worried about going back this spring, but I'm even more worried about what's going to be happening next fall. And if I don't know what's going to be happening in either spring or fall, I'm looking at all of my options and exploring what to do, because schools are enrolling right now, both our district and private schools. And part of our challenge, one of our challenges in being able to address that, as I understand it, is that it's very hard for us to say exactly what fall is going to look like right now, because we don't know what decisions are going to be made above us at the state or the county as to, are the current California Department of Public Health guidelines on spacing, for example, going to be in effect? Are the current guidelines on any of the metrics around, testing cadence or PPE or any of those things going to be in effect? And so can you just talk a little bit, Stacy, about what our goal, what our intent is for spring and fall in regards to in-person learning, but then also feel free to add any caveats you need to based on, we don't know what we don't know, and that makes it really hard for us to give answers that are more than a goal right now.
So let me address this spring first, because certainly our intent is to get students back to in-person in some form of a hybrid. And I think where some of the confusion comes in, I think we all use hybrid pretty loosely because hybrid has a lot of definitions to it. And so for us, hybrid is just the students at some remaining in distance learning and some portion of time on campus. That's our goal for this spring. For the fall, we really our intent is to be back into phase 4, which is in-person instruction. If we had the current guidelines from the state, that would be a challenge for us because of the social distancing, the keeping the cohort separate. But we also believe as we move forward to fall that some of those guidelines are probably going to be eased. We're already hearing some of the conversations about the 6-foot distancing versus a 4-foot distancing. So our planning at this point is to be back in person. Our plan B we'll plan what if that isn't capable, then how are we going to shift and have a hybrid where it would be more of our A/B model that we had originally looked at last spring and fall. So that really is our intent right now. We have our 4 phases. We want to be back into phase 4. Based on information we have now, we are planning in that sense. We will make modifications as needed.
And just a quick follow on, we have no way of knowing when we are likely to receive that final guidance from the county or the state. It could be this spring, it could be this summer, it could be the week before we're opening schools at the rate California has been letting us know about some of this other stuff. Is that correct?
That's correct. It could actually be all of those touch points because they do continue to change and modify as we move forward.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
All right, thanks, Lori. Let's see. So Phyllis, did you have anything?
No questions here, thanks.
Great, thanks, Phyllis. And then Sylvia, did you have anything?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, and I'll pass also. So let's go ahead and we'll come back to discussing this after public comments here. So how many comments cards do we have, Leslie?
I am rechecking now. It looks like we have 29.
29. Okay. Are folks good with 2 minutes, maybe? Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and set the timer for 2 minutes. And so take it away, Leslie.
Okay, great. And so at this point, since we've opened the item for public comment, we won't take any more comments on this item. If you would raise your hand when your name is called, and then if for some reason your name is different on your card than on your screen, please email me at mains_Leslie@cusdk8.org, and I'll have Pam put that in the chat. So the first speaker, I'll read 3 at a time. Sonia, if you'd raise your hand. Raj Singh, if you'd raise your hand. And Simi, if you'd raise your hand.
I see Sonia here. So Sonia, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone, for all your hard work. I just wanted to mention a couple things. It's come to my attention with a lot of research and talking to friends that surrounding districts have either already opened or have a firm plan to reopen by March 1st. Namely, they are Sunnyvale, Saratoga, Los Gatos, Mountain View, Los Altos, Palo Alto, Redwood City, Menlo Park, San Mateo, and Burlingame. I feel that CUSD students are being left behind and becoming more and more isolated and depressed. Soon, they will lose interest in school altogether. That in itself is a public health emergency. The data has shown that schools are safe, as the CDC has said last week. Please put our kids first and open schools in the red tier, as the CDC has recommended, as all the other districts surrounding us have already done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And then next speaker, is it Simi, Leslie?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Simi, please go ahead. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for giving me a couple of minutes. So I just want to say in the email that you sent out this week, you repeatedly say our reopening plans are built around established criteria that we continue to update for compliance with the state and public health guidelines. However, they are actually not saying the orange tier. So the orange tier is self-imposed by the Cupertino School District, and other school districts in Santa Clara County, such as Saratoga, has opened this week. Cupertino and Saratoga, they're neighboring cities. There's not a whole lot of difference in our data, and it's very difficult to understand why Cupertino students are being left behind. And looking at the metrics that you introduced today, it seems like they might be left behind by several weeks. And really looking at the introductions that you did today, not much has changed other than introducing red tier and vaccinations. But if you do the simple math here, there's no way we can get to that very quickly. So I want to just say that I think having the orange metrics still stand when it's not backed by science at all is not logical to me at all. And also during this meeting, you emphasized that the hubs that you've had have had 0 cases of COVID. You are happy with the success of these hubs, yet you are still not opening our schools. It just doesn't make any sense. However, your hubs are clearly emphasizing what the science is saying. There's little transmission in schools. So I'm having, as a parent, it's very frustrating to not see that our school district is operating by science. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And then the next speaker we have, I believe, is Raj. Raj, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can. Welcome.
I'm a former CUSD parent. I actually moved my children to private. I've had conversations with many of you at different times in the fall. I'm glad that we're finally at a point where people are looking at the same data that was released in August and said we could reopen safely. Jerry, thank you for pointing out the obvious. The schedule that's currently been proposed, we're not going to hit it. It's not possible with 2 vaccinations and dates. This year is basically a wash year. I'm seeing kids continue to suffer, and that's why I'm calling, even though my own children are now in private. Stacy, thank you for telling us that pretty much every neighboring district is opening before us. The general public, thank you for applying the pressure to finally get to this point. I've also looked at the, as an orthogonal point, I've also looked at the CUSD hybrid plan. Our in-person tuition, in-person hours are lower than some of our neighboring districts. I mean, nobody's really talking about this. Here's my opinion. CUSD has always purported itself as a top district, but we have a below average reopening plan. And I think you should think about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Raj. And then Leslie, we're ready for our next set of speakers.
Okay. Purvi Shah, Ivan, and Kiran.
Okay. So Purvi, if you could go ahead and raise your hand. Actually, I see some of the other folks. Ivan, would you please go ahead?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome, Ivan.
Fantastic. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you for the presentation as well. I feel that this time around there was a lot of good questions from the board to the presenters. I'm speaking to you as a parent of a child who's currently in one of the Cupertino public schools. I'd also like to extend my thanks to the teachers that are doing the impossible now during the pandemic, trying to navigate the complexities of virtual education. However, I should second the opinions of the speakers before me and say that the virtual teaching does not quite work. It might work for the core sciences, the language arts and math, but when it comes to PE, which is tremendously important for young children, when it comes to all the electives, if we're talking about a middle school, you cannot really teach cooking, arrange wood and metal workshops over the virtual environment. Teachers are doing what they can, and I extend my gratitude to them, but at the same time, we have to recognize that if kids continue like this, they will be falling behind. As Raj said, essentially it's a gap year for a lot of kids, and kids are really struggling with being able to keep up and maintain the social ties as well. It's very unfortunate to see that we're doing just so little and trying to extend the criteria to the red tier with vaccinations while everybody else around is reopening. I think an honest thing to do for the board will be really to provide the guidance to the parents and honestly say that it's very unlikely that the schools will reopen this year for proper teaching, because even the hybrid teaching is not really a proper teaching. It's just a couple of years a day, and that's why a lot of parents said that they don't want to opt for this option. Personally, I'm seriously considering going for private schools because I can see based on today's discussion that the schools are unlikely to open this year, and we are talking about not properly opening them even for the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. And then I think we have Karen up here next. So Karen, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kieran Aurora, and I'm a parent of a child at Christum College School. I'm also a physician with an additional master's degree in public health. Although I'm not currently practicing, I continue to follow scientific and medical developments regarding COVID-19 very, very closely. First, I want to say I'm very appreciative of the great efforts that everyone has taken to safely reopen schools. I also very much empathize with individuals and families in multiple situations and with multiple and varying needs. That being said, it is so very important that all guidelines and decisions regarding school reopening be foremost based on scientific evidence and principles, with the utmost priority given to individual and public health. Scientific evidence supports continuing in distance learning mode until vaccination is available to all adults and children. Additionally, asking teachers, staff members, etc., to return to the classroom before widespread vaccination risks their health and lives and those of their families. This is not fair, ethical, or necessary. Their health and safety and the health and safety of students, families, and community members is paramount and should be the most important factor in determining the appropriate time to return to in-person learning. It is crucial to take into consideration the very significant consequences of reopening prior to vaccination being available to everyone, namely an increase in critical illness and death in the community, including among children and adults alike. Let's make sure all decisions are based on sound science and medicine. We all want what is best for our children, teachers, staff, and the greater community. Thank you so much for all of your dedication, thoughtfulness, and hard work.
Hey, thank you, Karen. And then Leslie, our next set of speakers, please.
Okay, and so Purvi Shah, if you're still here, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll continue to move on. We've got Mark Lundy, we've got Anu Deshmukh, and we have Anita Ralston. If you please raise your hand. I see Mark, I see Anita,
All right,
and Anu, I don't see.
So Mark, please go ahead.
Good evening again. I've mentioned to board and staff members on a couple of occasions that I have confidence in the district's approach to reopening campuses to students. And I'm really excited about phase 2 learning hubs, and I'm on campus to support ours at DeVargas every week. Carrie Ito and her team really rock. However, in light of the planned reopening of several Northern California districts, I want to point out that the science cited by many community members is not so cut and dried. According to an article by EdSurge citing data from NWEA and Stanford, that math growth is slightly behind previous years, and reading growth is right about where it has been over past years. So students as a whole are not falling behind. Certainly there are students who are suffering in this. Teachers are suffering under it. But I just wanted to encourage the board to stay the course, not allow itself to be pressured by a minority of the community as represented by its most vocal members. Please have confidence in staff recommendations. Please keep CUSD safe. And oh, by the way, I was fortunate to get my second vaccination dose this past Tuesday due to the brief lowering last month of the age restriction by the state. And I was wondering, I know you can't answer, but I was wondering if any any steps have been taken by staff to track the number of staffers who are managing to get our vaccinations early and be able to make greater use of us ahead of any formal opening of access to educators. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mark. And then our next speaker is Anita Leslie.
Correct.
All right, Anita, please go ahead.
Thank you for letting me speak this evening. I would like you to understand the importance of the need for teacher vaccines and are waiting till the orange tier. I know there is a big push to open schools, and I would like others to understand my own personal experience with COVID. During Thanksgiving break, my family, which includes 2 out of my 3 kids, my husband and I all tested positive for COVID. We do not know how we contracted the virus, as we have been very careful during our time in quarantine. While I consider myself extremely fortunate to have fully recovered, I want you to know that it was not an easy process. I was and am worried as a daughter who takes care of her 89-year-old mother and is responsible for driving her to dialysis 3 days a week. I was worried as a mother if and how my kids were going to recover, as one of my son's teammates was in the hospital for COVID and it affected his heart. I was worried as a wife, as my husband had the most severe symptoms in our family, had lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks before he was able to turn the corner. All of us had different symptoms. None of us had a fever. Each of us had varying degrees of recovery. So a simple checkoff list entering into the school is not going to determine who has COVID. We know many children are asymptomatic. Although my main symptom of extreme fatigue took about 2 weeks to recover from, my full recovery took about 6 weeks. I would have not been able to return to teaching for about a month, as I still do not have enough strength to get through a whole day to commute, teach, plan, and correct. Who would cover my classroom for over a month? Also, there were days when I thought I had enough strength to teach, but after about an hour in distant learning, I had realized I no longer had the energy to even sit in a chair. I taught from my floor so I could get to those kids. Oh,
thank you. Thank you, Anita. Leslie, could we get the next set of speakers, please?
Great. So we've got Anu Deshmukh. Oh, I'm sorry. I did that one already. Anu, if you're here, raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next group. Okay. Uma Jayaraman, Andrew Cow, Valentine Rybov, and I'll do one more, Laura Plotkin.
Okay, I see Uma here. So Uma, please go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Like all of the speakers before me, I'm going to say the same thing. Like all the neighboring districts in the same county have or already have plans of opening in the red tier, and seeing the new metric about the red tier plus the vaccinations, and given the amount of time we have for the rest of the school year, I don't see how we're going to meet the metric of have an opportunity of the children to come back to school year. It doesn't seem like we're going to even meet that metric, right? I mean, we're looking at 2 months with the 2 doses of vaccine plus some buffer time before the teachers are fully vaccinated. And the other metric you said was orange tier and no complete vaccination, and that didn't make sense either, because there was another clause saying that all teachers chose to be vaccinated before returning to school. So without full staffing, how are we going to meet that metric, right? If assuming that we jump into the orange tier and the teachers are not vaccinated, then in that case, how are you going to open up the schools? Because you're saying that teachers will not come back. Then what's the choice for our children then? So that is one thing. And the third thing is PE, online PE is extremely, it's like a joke right now. I think at least the district has to look into at least starting that in person, like very soon. That's something I really request. And that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uma. And who is our next speaker, Leslie? Andrew?
Speaker is Andrew.
Okay.
I don't see Andrew's up. Valentin, I don't see Valentin up.
Oh, wait,
There we
Valentin,
go.
I think.
Valentin is there.
All right, Valentin, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, hi, welcome.
Thank you. My first question echoes several speakers before me. Sonia, Simi, Raj, Uma just now. We all, Ivan or Ivan, we all share the same concern. Why is this CUSD using stricter rules for reopening the schools when all neighboring districts are back to in-person? It doesn't make sense. That's not the reason why we chose to live within the district boundaries. We chose to live here because of the quality education, and right now our kids are not receiving it. That's loud and clear. I understand there are opponents of returning to in-person instruction, and there will always be, as long as the COVID is a reality. But let's stop with fear tactics and let's reopen the schools, please. My other question is, when CASD sent the questionnaire, it appears that it was a very, it was akin to a bait and switch tactic, because the options we were given were to return to school for a couple hours, couple days a week, or continue with distance learning. There was no option to return to full-time in-person instruction. And finally, I would like to piggyback on the PE comment. It's been a ridiculous, I mean, my kid is a straight A student. He does what he's told. He does all the assignments. He's very active physically outside of school, and PE was just a joke, and it's only getting worse. And it's time we stop with this, please.
Thank you, Valentin. And then who do we have next here?
We have Laura.
Laura. Okay, great. Laura, please go ahead.
Laura, you should be able to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. I would like to thank parents who presented their frustration about not reopening the school. I see around district kids with more means that are attending open private schools, as they are able to find a safe path for reopening, while people that rely on Cupertino Union public school system don't have means are being discriminated. With 2 kids in the system, I can see that remote learning is causing tremendous stress, both on the educational and the mental aspects of the kids and parents. Please move forward and find a path to open the schools. I believe that the last 11 months, we could prepare the schools opening and find a working solution. I would like also to ask the parents who support me, contact me to laura.plotkin@gmail.com. It's LORA.plotkin, PLOTKIN @gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Let's see, a new set of folks. Leslie?
Yes, and let me just remind the audience. So you can turn in comment cards, but once we start taking public comment on an item, we close comment cards for this item. And so we will collect your comments, we will share them with the board, and you can always email them. So we're going to do that first set that we got before we opened. Andrew, we called your name. I don't see your hand up, so I will go to the next set. We've got Rupa Taranath, Stacy Yi, Kent Chang, and Ginny Sirki, and I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. If I did not call your name, if you would please put your hand down. So we have Rupa.
All right, Rupa, please go ahead.
Rupa, we should be able to hear you. It shows that talking is permitted. So Rupa, if you would try to address the board. I'm going to have Pam work on the back end on that. There may be an issue with her version of Zoom. So let's move on to Stacy Yee.
Yes, I see Stacy here. Stacy, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Great, thank you. I am a teacher in the district, and I'm deeply concerned that the district is under the impression that all staff leaves of absence or requests for leaves of absence have been addressed and implemented. Another staff member and I have emailed our HR representative about moving forward with leaves at the start of this week and have not yet heard a response. Also, based on the CEA union meeting earlier today, it is clear that many teachers will be pursuing a leave of absence, but they're not sure what paperwork needs to be completed or where to find it. In addition, I'm a parent in the district. When I completed the survey for my twin daughters back in December, I was under the impression that I was deciding whether or not they would be going to school in the morning for a couple of hours for academic instruction. Now that the decision has been made that the elementary students will return for 75 minutes in the afternoon for social emotional learning, I'm concerned for other parents that they're not aware of the changes for in-person instruction. I feel that the district should be totally transparent with parents as far as what in-person instruction will look like and give them the opportunity to change their minds regarding how their children will be instructed moving forward for the school year. We're clearly in a very divided district. The most recent data shows that 57% of parents want to remain in distance learning. We all have our personal stories, as I do. 2 weeks ago, a beloved 57-year-old neighbor across the street from me died from COVID. I hope that we will all be respectful of each other's personal stories and situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. And then I think Kent is next. So
let's see if we can get Rupa.
oh, all right. Let's.
Rupa, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and big shout out to all the teachers who are doing the best that they can in this very difficult scenario. However, several parents have talked about what they think about the current situation, and I kind of second what the parents have said. Particularly in our case, I feel like more than academic abilities, children are really suffering with regards to social, emotional learning, and also their own. They're keen to go back and meet their friends, and they're feeling very isolated. They may be doing well academically still because they're just used to that, but they are really missing the social interaction and their friends. There are ways to maybe we can have some kind of open air classrooms. How do we get creative about this is what I wanted to point out. Maybe an open air PE class, open air art class, or even some of the learning that can be done on the school grounds rather than limit inside classrooms. And the weather is going to get better in spring, and we are blessed with good weather in California. So I would really urge the school board, the teachers, and the decision makers to start to think out of the box here and try to tend towards opening up the schools earlier than later and get the kids back with where they belong, in schools, and not hidden in their rooms on front of the screen. And some of them are not even seeing any faces because all the cameras are turned off. So it is they're taking a big hit on their emotional well-being, and this is a big concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupa. Hey, Leslie, I see an Andrew back. Is this an Andrew from before?
It is. So we'll go with Andrew followed by Kent.
Okay, Andrew, please go ahead.
Thank you so much.
We're getting an echo here, Andrew.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm very interested in speaking to some of the needs of the kids who are kind of at home. I want to echo some of the comments that were made earlier. My own kids, like, they really suffer socially, emotionally. As for some of the teachers concerned about health, I, at the risk of sounding callous, I mean, the fact is a lot of people have had to work through the pandemic, a lot of essential workers, healthcare workers. My wife is a physician. Even when there's no vaccine, they had to work, right? Because there is a job and it has to be done. And you're taking care of other people. And I know teachers didn't sign up for the career they did, knowing that there's a pandemic risk, but nor did a lot of the essential workers out there. So I am also frustrated that Cupertino seems to be lagging neighboring school districts in terms of reopening. And it feels like the plan that was laid out today is unrealistic. And it's basically pointing to not reopening school for the rest of the school year. I am also concerned that will the school be reopened next year? So I guess I just want to really urge the board and the school district to reopen as quickly as possible and pursue and just be as aggressive as our neighbors. You know, we don't have to do better than them, but at least do what our neighbors are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. And then Kent, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking my question. Let me begin by saying that I appreciate a lot of the efforts that the board and every single teacher and volunteer have put in trying to get us through this very challenging time. First, echoing other folks before me, I would also like to know how classes that require significant in-person engagement and use of on-site facility are supposed to operate when schools remain closed. Take PE, for instance. As far as I know, it is a common practice to ask our kids to keep their cameras open and record videos of them exercising. I study information security and data ethics, and I recognize that it entails serious equity and privacy implications. And as others have said, it's a blunt display of pedagogical and logistical consideration, and it's a burden for both kids and parents. Second, and not unrelated, I learned that the district has managed to put the parcel tax measure on the ballot for the special election coming in on May 4th, which appears to have sparked debates in our community. I would love for the board to address this. How are we supposed to vote for more tax if the basic school services are not provided and the quality of our children's education is suffering? And particularly when a similar measure failed to obtain majority support last March. Any response to any of those points would be greatly appreciated. And thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Kent. Are those our speakers for this round?
Yes, if Ginny is in the audience, Ginny, G-I-N-N-Y, if you'd raise your hand. Otherwise, if you'd please place your hand down and we will call on the next group. Okay. Esther, if you are here, if you would raise your hand. Deb Stoddard, if you're here, would you raise your hand? Noah, if you would raise your hand. And Lynn. So I do see Esther.
All right, Esther, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
So I just want to thank the board and the school and all the teachers, and especially spending this much time to address such an important topic and really allowing the forum for really all participants to provide their viewpoints. I want my kids back in school. I have a 4th grader as well as a 7th grader, and they're suffering in their mental health significantly. I think in terms of academics, I think it's a waste year, but that's okay. They will learn their academics back. The mental health that they're suffering from is not something that can be brought back that easily. These kids are in a mental health crisis that needs to be acknowledged. And I'm very disappointed that our school district, unlike other school districts, have an active plan to reopen. And I think we can do better than that. The data that exists in terms of COVID transmission from kids does not support not reopening schools. That's pretty evident. And I'm a physician and I read through the literature, and UCSF has ground rounds that's posted. I highly encourage all of our board members to listen to that. The data does not support a high transmission in schools that have already opened. Also, the last comment I want to make is on the parcel tax. In order for parents to support the partial tax, we're asking to pay for services, but if we're not able to provide those services, I'm less likely to support the parcel tax. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. Then I think our next speaker is Deb. So Deb, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is to the board and to the parent community. The pandemic has been challenging. Kids, parents, and teachers are all really struggling. This is hard. Everything that we do has an extra layer of challenge, stress, as well as increased awareness of our surroundings and safety. As we continue to move forward toward reopening for more students, it's critical that we all practice the character traits that we're teaching our own children: patience, kindness, compassion, and civility. We all want our kids back in school. As a teacher, I've never worked harder to be sure that all of my students are meeting their academic goals while attending to their social emotional needs. My team has translated our entire program to an engaging, synchronous and asynchronous activities that promote engagement and learning. This is a huge time-consuming task. My days are very long, exhausting, and stressful, but my students never see that. My parents don't see that. I dig deep to my place of integrity because I want a loving, supportive learning environment for my students. Flat Room 11 meets each day 3 times a day. We have fun, we laugh, we play, we sing, we do art projects, and we learn. We each have a flat class bear. We each have a class picture cobbled together. Tomorrow we're having lunch, playing games, and sharing virtual Valentines. I've written monthly postcards to my students. We have built a loving, nurturing class culture. My students are meeting the standards. It's not a gap year for my second graders. They're learning to be resilient, flexible, adaptable, and to practice perseverance. I ask for your patience as we move closer to making schools safe for your children and for me. As an aside, all 3 of my grandchildren, ages 1, 3, and 5, have COVID. They have high fevers, malaise, coughs, and congestion. And one tested positive and had no symptoms until 2 days after her positive test. They did everything right. No play dates, no visiting, masking. Community spread is real. We're in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, I believe Noah is the next speaker. So Noah, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you for your time. I wanted to start in saying we appreciate our teachers and staff, and we do see you, and we do know that you're trying to support our children. But distance learning is not enough. You say you see them in class, and you're sending them postcards, but you don't see them out of sight of class. They're alone at home with no one, and all the time in front of a screen. My first comment is going to be like, what about a teacher's survey? They say many want vaccines to come back, or don't. We didn't see an actual teacher's survey that tells us how they want to come back. Maybe some of them do already want to come back without a vaccination. Maybe some of them don't even want to take a vaccination. So why don't do a teacher's survey like other districts? My second comment, I'm glad you have changed metric 2, the first metric, sorry, but that's still not enough. Why suddenly a vaccination is a metric and necessary? State Health Department and CDC and our governor has all stated that this is not necessary. Why not just do red tier? Why suddenly go to a vaccination? As I'm echoing my previous parents, if you are going to wait for vaccination, this school year will not open. Really, you are making a joke of all of us, and you are assaulting our intelligence. Stacy's reopening email was really an insult to all of us. Really checking more times to see if something's going to change. No, it's not going to change. You need to change. This board needs to weigh in and tell the staff to change the metric. You need to to show our voices, our parents' voices. Really, who wants to go back to school? Let them go back to school. You're not thinking about our kids. really. And really don't let me get started also on the hybrid model you decided on. Really, 75 minutes, that's a joke.
Thank you, Noah. And then I believe Lynn is the next speaker. So Lynn.
Yeah, and then we've also found Jenny. So if we want to leave up Yugon, the name Yugon, and we will be good to go with 2 speakers.
Okay, so let's let Lynn go ahead next then.
Thank you.
Right. Lynn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say that I appreciate the teachers very much. They're working very hard and it's a very hard time for you. But personally, I'm losing my faith in the Board of Education. If you want to wait for vaccination to go back to school, then what is the superintendent doing up the leadership chain of command to bring the vaccine faster? Right? What are you doing in terms of talking to who's above this? Do you take it to the governor and bring funds to the teacher to address the teacher's need? Like, do you have a say in this? Shouldn't you have a say in this, an elected member? Like, when you're given limited resources, shouldn't you fight for more resources to support our children instead of sitting in a room and decide which one, A or B, the children or the teacher to sacrifice? Why don't we want our cake and want to eat it too? Go up your chain of command, do something, right? You had 11 months to plan for this and you know it's coming. And you know the CDC and the WHO said it's going to take a long time to get a vaccine. Why haven't you planned for this in the beginning? Right now, you're behind other school districts. I've lost my faith in you as an educator. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And then Leslie, who will be next here?
It'll be Ginny, last name Sikri, S-I-K-R-I. I am sorry, Ginny, for the confusion on our end.
Hi, can you hear us now?
Yes.
We get a little bit of an echo, but yes, we do hear you.
All right, perfect. So this is Ginny and Yogi together. I want to make a quick point, and I think summarizing everything that we've heard. What I hear is that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of students who want to come back to school. And my first question is, why are those hundreds of people not being heard? That's my first question. My second question to the board is that you've been given all the flexibility to be able to open something which is possible. You have the flexibility to maybe call a few teachers, maybe call volunteers, maybe call the students who want to come. So you have every flexibility in the world to do what you can. So instead of saying we can't open or not open, you need to think about what you can do. This is just, and in the end, a school runs for students. So the students, the children are your customer. The whole universe works backwards from the customer and it solves their problem. What I don't understand is that there are hundreds of people telling you to open the school in some shape or form. Why is their voice not being heard? Why can't you just open, maybe think of maybe opening for 10 minutes where the students can come in, they form a circle, and then they go back. You know, it's going to be much better than them suffering in their small rooms and just causing so much pain, anxiety. I mean, families are suffering like there's no tomorrow. And the board is just sitting quiet and doing nothing about it. My son comes every morning and he says, Dad, Mom, do you have news about when the school can open? I don't mind going for 5 minutes. Guys, act on it. It is your job.
Thank you. Any other speakers, Leslie?
We do. We have Mike Rogers, Liat, Esther, and Yogi. And if your name does not come up as I've read it, if you would please email me. Pam has put my email in the chat. So Mike is on.
All right, I see Mike. So Mike, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thanks for your time. As a parent, as a grandparent, it's very difficult to have an extremely, extremely bright 5-year-old grandson for which distance learning within the Cupertino district has been a complete failure. and your child was withdrawn by his mother from class recently, especially when there are many other school districts that have been open for months without incidents, especially when Dr. Sarah Cody, probably the most conservative health officer in the country, put together a 10-page slide deck back in December, doing her own research and summarizing their almost immeasurable clusters anywhere in the US in schools. Europe schools were mostly open. Private schools in the county are, a majority of them are operating some type of in-person learning. That's just very hard to take as a parent and grandparents. Secondly, let's talk about the metrics a little bit. Couple of corrections here. The state allows for a correction for the amount of testing that's done. So to get to red, we are actually a lot closer because that allows us to double the number of cases to about 14. We've more than doubled the amount of testing by the state median for quite some time. So that's the range. The county is actually down to 24, 25 per 100,000, which is actually the number the governor is looking at and saying that this is a safe number for schools to be open. And my question is, if that changes, if the governor does come out with that number, will Cupertino finally relent and look at different criteria? The other thing is that this part of the county has extremely low case rates, extremely low test positive. We're in the yellow by test positive. The county's in orange and headed to yellow. And the case count in this part of the county is actually already at the red state.
Thank you. So do we have any of the other speakers here, Leslie?
Yeah, Esther has already spoke, so I called her name by mistake. We're still waiting for Liat. Liat, I don't think you've spoken yet, so if you'd raise your hand and I will read Madhukar, Madhukar, Lindsay, Gilly, Gilli. I see Lindsay. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Lindsay and Gilly would be
All
next.
right, great. Lindsay, please go ahead.
Hello. This is a very hard message for me to give. I'm very impressed with and so very thankful for all the teachers, but I am extremely disappointed in this leadership team. In the state of California, K-6 schools have been allowed to reopen without waivers, even in the purple tier, as long as the county case rates are below 25 cases per 100,000 and the test positivity rate is under 8%. We in Santa Clara currently meet that criteria. We are arguing about purple versus orange and vaccines versus no vaccines, and yet we could reopen today. Our case rate is at 21 cases per 100,000 and our test positivity rate is at 3.6%. This board and this school district has chosen to independently create your own unique, more restrictive guidelines than the state's official public health guidelines. None of us, no parents and no board members, should be reading scientific articles on our own claiming we know best. We should be following the state's official public health guidelines formulated by professionals tasked with making difficult trade-offs between the risks of COVID and the benefits of learning. The slides you put out today, again, lend a false sense of hope to parents. Even if tomorrow's teachers were able to suddenly make a vaccination appointment, by my math, the earliest possible date students could return would be April 19, and that is just fiction. So please be more clear with our parent community that right now, with your plan, students will not be in phase 3 in person, even in a hybrid mode until May at the very earliest. I have personally written off the likelihood of any in-person learning this year because I have lost faith in this board's ability to make hard calls, make decisions based on the official public health recommendations and science, and act with urgency. You could choose to allow younger kids into school before older kids, but since day one, you have refused inexplicably to make different guidelines for the youngest students who cannot even read. Lastly, I'll echo another caller who said that you are ruining our chances of passing a parcel tax because you will be hard pressed to find any support for tax when you have not provided basic services this entire year. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And then who do we have here next, Leslie?
We've got Rashmi is actually Madhukar, so we can call on Rashmi, followed by Gilly, and then our final speaker will be Sarita Burbank.
Okay, all right, Rashmi, please go ahead.
Can you hear us, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for the board, and thank you to you guys, for the wonderful work that you guys are doing. I know, we have a high representation of folks who want schools to be open, but, I just want to let you guys know that, it's okay. You guys are doing the best you can and based on the metrics that you are seeing. And, we are really appreciative of everything that you guys are doing. I know it is hard on the kids. Our kids suffer too, but, maybe some kids not so much. Some kids probably thrive in the remote learning model. So, I feel like, it's going to be a mixed basket, but, I'm really happy to see that there is representation for the majority. And, I know it is hard on the parents who are unable to have, who are in the minority at this time, but yeah, we do appreciate that. One question I have is to the board and to everybody is, whenever we do go to the hybrid model or any of the other models, how is the school day gonna look like? Are there any chances of having the same teachers, or are the teachers gonna change? Any details about any of those things, that would be helpful actually, right? I think, opening up a school on a limited basis, I'm not sure, where we stand, but, I think case rates are going down, and I'm seeing, a possibility for that maybe towards the end of the school year. But, it would be good to have at least all the details figured out sooner rather than later. Whenever schools open up, kids are going to be positioned to be able to, make a choice and go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. And then Gilly, I think, is the next speaker. So please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to first congratulate you, member of the boards. I feel that it's the first time since I started to attend the board meetings that I feel parents and kids have a partner in Cupertino District. Listen to you talking about the plans to reopen our schools makes me optimistic, and I have to admit I'm afraid to keep my hope too high, as in the past you didn't open when you could, like in October. We need to rebuild our trust in Cupertino District, and you should know that when we are getting an email from the district inviting us to enroll our kids to an in-person school camp for ski week break, we as the parents get the message that for $1,200 a week, suddenly the district can offer us now a safe in-person program. So please keep in mind that we need to rebuild the trust with the Cupertino District. The trust is very fragile, as many of Cupertino District neighbors are already offering an in-person learning option for weeks now. Let's rebuild the trust before more parents will enroll their kids to private schools. And I hope that this time you will not fail us and open our schools for the sake of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilly. And then did we have one more, Leslie?
We should have Sarita.
There she is. Okay. Sarita, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so a couple of things I wanted to mention. One, I wanted to ask if another survey was going to go out to parents, because if not, I want to implore and recommend that another survey be sent to parents, giving more detail as to what a schedule would look like if students return for in-person learning and the options. Speaking as a parent of 3 children in our district, I want to know and still want to know if my children's teachers are planning on and feel safe enough to return to school, because wherever their teachers go, I want my kids to go. That's who they're learning from and who they enjoy learning from the most, and I want them to be together. Second, the first survey was a bit unclear. As a parent and being a teacher as well in the district, it even felt unclear to me as a teacher on what the choices were and when they were being given as a choice to go back in person or to stay in distance learning and what that would look like. And I know that's an ever-changing thing. So I appreciate the candor that you guys are giving with what that's going to look like. But I feel like a new survey would be imperative. As a teacher, I need to know that my school is safe. I would like more clarification on what sort of PPE is being installed for us as teachers. I feel that I need to know more specifically what's going to be in my classroom, my school campus, in the surrounding areas, and what kind of training we'll receive. I also think that a lot of these things could have been being installed already and while kids aren't at school. So I'm hoping that we'll get some clarification on when that will happen. And lastly, I just wanted to say that more than anything, I want to be back in the classroom with my students, but I want to be clear that at this point, I don't feel safe and I want to feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita. Okay, that I believe concludes our speakers, right, Leslie?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
All right, great. So let's gonna bring the questions and discussions back to the board. So I'm thinking we go around and you can make questions or comments, and maybe we kind of go around once and then we can open it up to discussion. All right, let's see, Satish, I think you're first on the list here. So would you like to go?
Hey, Jerry. Yeah, I think probably I will, rather than questions now, I think I asked my questions, probably I can make, or should I wait for one more round to make comments? Or
do folks have questions, or would you like to go into discussion now? Like maybe put up your hand if you still have questions you'd like to ask. It doesn't sound like it. So Satish, why don't you just go ahead and make your comments and start your deliberations.
Okay, so let me, yeah, I'll make one conclusion on all these things. So one is, I think overall, a lot of progress we have made. I think let's not discount that. I know that a lot of sentiments around that we are not moving fast, but we made up, I think if you compare like last couple of meetings or couple of, or a month back, how we were and how we are today, we have made a tremendous improvements in certain areas for sure. Like, one is like a periodic assessment. I think we used to do, we were proposing it for doing it once in a month. That has been, I think I could already see that every 2 weeks kind of things, the assessment is being proposed. That's a great thing. And earlier the plan was like, if by April 1st, if we cannot, make a decision, we will be keeping, the rest of the year we are not going to open. That is being taken out. Excellent news. We'll continue evaluating that. That's also a major progress towards that. Then the next one is how we are making the phase 2, really better, like, the hubs like 14 to 27, okay, or 27 to 44 and 596 students, right? So, and plans to, continue doing better on the hub side, right? So these, I know that these things definitely a major step towards it. From the metrics point, I think that 2, 3, 4 are definitely a great news for us, because we are almost green everywhere, right? I think the bottleneck here is the metric 1, and I know that here also we made some progress, but still I think probably not very satisfying for everybody in the community. That's a big challenge here. So I don't know whether is there a room for us to relook into this, but I wanted definitely I wanted to push back to EC or the staff to see that anything more we can do here, right? I know that we have that tier with vaccine or orange, whichever comes first, kind of, right? So both, I think, it is going to take time, right? It's not going to be very easy, and especially now vaccine also in 2 shots, which should be at least a month apart. So overall, if you take it, like we have only 3 or 4 months of study or learning time. If you take it, like, if you are middle of February to June middle, it's only about 4 months. And so we don't have a lot of time this year. So if we want kids to be back in this year or in the summer or in the spring, I think we should look into something else here around, right? I'm not saying that this is wrong, but I don't know whether very creative ideas we can talk about. Okay, I wanted more discussion on that. The next part is, I think I've made some notes here. I think one concern in generally, but which I've been talking to a lot of parents and a lot of mails also personally coming to me, as well as the board, right? So in that social, emotional, mental health is again continue to be a top challenge, right? That is a concern for many, and they wanted their kids to be back into school, not just for the academics. So is there any option for us to get at least 1 day or few hours of every kid, right, on a rotation basis? Right? It's not a regular, like, like everybody together kind of, but maybe even a shorter time or 1 day in a week or something, whether we can do that, right? Not for the academics, but in an open ground, anything can be done. And especially probably the parent survey or
or parents who is really interested in such things for making their kids more supportive in that area, the mental health, social emotional side. If somebody is really struggling, can we help them out, right? Then the next one is like, the phase two, anything, I know that 596 we are talking, and now phase 3 is getting delayed due to all these things. How best or what can we do to bring more kids? I understand that we have a lot of challenges around volunteers are less, the subs are limited, but is there a way for us to increase the capacity? Or can we have this social emotional stuff also as a criteria for phase 2? Probably that is not made in the current phase 2 criteria, whether we can add some or revise the criteria of phase 2. These all are going to help us here if phase 3 is getting delayed. So safety definitely continue to be a high priority, but at the same time, I think these concerns also need to be addressed. We have to get into a place where we can satisfy as many kids as possible, at the same time supporting teachers as well. I think that's all I have, Jerry.
All right, thank you, Satish. And Lori, would you like to go next?
Sure. I guess my comments tonight would just be that there is no one size fits all out there. As we talk through what other local districts are doing and what we're doing, there's a reason why everybody's plans look different. Everybody's plans look different and have different nuances to them and different ways of addressing challenges and issues that have arisen, because all of us have a unique situation. We have a unique demographic. We have a unique set of needs from our families. And, I think we have tried to address that as best we can. We have, several hundred, 200, 300, 400 callers on who are expressing their opinions tonight. We get many, many, many emails and phone calls and texts and communications, and the swath of asks run the gamut, and the swaths of concerns run the gamut. And again, there is no one size fits all. And so I think while it is so important that we continue to stay abreast of and look for ideas of what's going on around us, it's also important that we are listening intently to what is being asked of us by our community. And whether or not, I can meet the needs of everybody in this community with my interpretation of any of this or vote on any of this is not the point. We are a 5-member board. We are a 5-member board because we are representative of a variety of opinions in this community. And I don't discount any of the opinions, the asks, the recommendations, the emails, or the communications I get from anybody. I try to take all of it into account. And at the end of the day, a trustee is elected to apply, to take in all of that information, to educate themselves as best as they can on everything that is out there. As a healthcare practitioner myself, I still read a variety of journals on a regular basis. As somebody who sort of picked up a second career in the world of education, I read as much in the professional journals there as well as I possibly can. And so I consider myself to be, as informed as I can in coming to make the decisions that I'm being asked to make. And I will tell you that unless and until you have sat in this seat, you don't know what it's like to be asked to vote, to force somebody to go back against their will. And you don't know what it's like to be asked to vote on something that potentially impacts not just the health and safety, but the lives and the livelihood of people. And so, I truly do feel like we are being as responsive as we can under extraordinary circumstances to meeting the needs as best we can of as many as we can. And so what I keep as my core metric here in all of this is, are we doing the best we can by as many students as we can and maintaining the best health and safety for as many as we can? And I think right now, yes, we are. And so I understand that there are parents who will be disappointed to hear me say that. I understand that there are parents who will be thrilled to hear me say that. I understand there are staff who will be on both sides of that fence too. And I'm okay with that because I feel like we can only do as best as we can. So I guess I would just end my comments tonight here by saying that I think these metrics are getting us as close to that goal as we can. I think we are addressing the feedback we have received in the best way that we can on continuing to push forward on getting to that goal of return to in-person learning. I also think, I know that our staff continues to work very hard on revising not only our phase 2 and our phase 3, but also looking out and planning towards phase 4 for when we can get there. I don't think any of the work has stopped on any of that. And I also understand deeply that as parents, we can all only do the best we can by the children we have. And so if what you hear me saying tonight doesn't work for your child, I accept that. And I hope that you can continue to support your child in the best possible way that you can, because we are trying our hardest and we still may not get it right for every single child. And that's something that we also have to accept. So I guess I'll end with that. And I will just say, thank you to our families for continuing to provide input to us. I have found it invaluable to hear all of it, the good, the bad, the encouragement, the derogatory, it all helps inform the decisions. And I also will thank our staff for all of the hard work and for sticking with it. And to our students, because I know how hard our students are working. I think we spend a lot of time thanking the adults through this pandemic, and sometimes we forget to thank the kids for all of their hard work too. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Lori. And then let's see, Phyllis, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. A couple of comments. I appreciate all the work the staff has done on the metrics. And for the most part, I agree. I think they're good. I think we're heading in the right direction. But I also appreciate some of the comments we heard tonight from some of our parents. And some of the ones that resonated with me, one of our parents commented about, it was something like this. If we could even get everyone vaccinated tomorrow and give the length of time that we're talking about in the metric about the red tier and the vaccinations, the earliest we could start, according to her math, was May 1st. So that concerns me a bit. And I would like for the staff to explore if there's a way, this is kind of piggybacking on what Satish said, to just explore if there's a way that we can accelerate that in any way. I don't know if that's possible, but I'd like the staff to explore that. And the other thing I heard tonight from parents, and I know this has been a big thing with Sylvia from the very start, and that is the social emotional piece. Can we also explore if there's anything we can do with outdoor, again, piggybacking on Satish, maybe one day a week or something that we could do to help with that. So just some things that I'd like the staff to take a look at. But for the most part, I think we're on the right track. I would like to see it accelerated a little bit. I don't know if that's possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. And then Sylvia, go ahead, please.
So one thing I wanted to explore based on some of the parent comments and questions, and it is something that I did ask a question about before we heard the comments, just about some of our neighboring districts, because we are hearing that a lot, and because we do have in our community, because our district's so large, and it encompasses 6 cities, and that means that we have that many more cities that we're neighboring and boundering. Stacy, maybe you can answer this question now, or if not, maybe bring it back at the next meeting. But for some of the reasons, is it a funding issue? Is it a size issue? Is it because I know we're the largest elementary district in Northern California, compared to Saratoga has 4 schools. So I'm just trying to understand, or get a better understanding, I guess, of maybe what some of those bottlenecks or challenges might be. I imagine funding is part of it. I imagine size is part of it. I imagine maybe some of those priorities, like our community saying that we heard it tonight, that they want to stay with their teacher. And we know that a lot of the districts that have reopened basically blew up their classrooms and have totally shuffled their teachers around. So I'm just trying to get a better understanding of what that looks like and maybe how that compares, so that we're comparing apples to apples, I guess, versus totally different models. And I don't.
Stacy, I think you're muted.
Apologize for that. I'm happy to address it because I don't know that we are always comparing apples to apples, because I think you did hit on 3 very key points in some of our surrounding districts. For a variety of reasons, there are differences. Size is definitely easier in the smaller districts to bring students back. We also have districts that have the funding available, that they've hired additional staff so that they can split their classes up. We have surrounding districts that have done the restructuring and reshuffling, and so students will no longer be with their teachers. And so it really is the combination of all of those pieces that make each district unique. I still, there is still a lot of misperception, I think, in that when the hybrid models or the bringing students back, some of those are very small cohorts. They still are only for 1 to 2 days a week. It's not the full everyday 5 days a week. And so there are a lot of those nuances. And I think each district is really trying to do what they can do best, and each has different strengths, different areas that they're focusing on. But again, I think we are all working at the best that we can to bring our students back into in-person. And we are unique and we're large in that we cover 6 different cities. But again, I think where we are moving forward to is where we need to be. I did want to share an observation as I was listening to a lot of the comments, and a little, not concerning, but it red flagged me, is the comments about with our metric where we added the red tier and the availability of vaccines, and that would put us out into the May area. And really remembering the conversation, as we are increasing the number of vaccinations, the intent is that our case rates are going to go down, that as we move into red tier, we could quickly move into orange tier. And so yes, the reality is we may get to orange tier before our other criteria of the red tier and the vaccinations, but it's all moving for positive. I think we're more optimistic that we're not going to be staying in purple tier or red tier through May or June. We are really optimistic with, if we're all doing our part and we're all doing our social distancing and we're all wearing our masks, that we are going to move quickly through this spring. The vaccinations are going to become more available. We will see some of those pieces starting to return. And so we should shift from red into orange. And it may happen that we are in orange, but it will happen this spring. I am confident and optimistic we're all doing our part to get there.
And then I wonder if, because the last time we did a parent survey, we were kind of in deep purple, and the climate has changed a bit. At the time, I don't think we had a vaccine on the horizon. And at the time, we had a different hybrid model or proposal. And so could we look at putting out another survey that would include kind of some of those potential models, showing, the different options, showing kind of what, again, asking parents, what are the priorities, especially as we're seeing some of these other models from other districts, like you said, like, I know one of these districts is like, 2 days on and then 3 days of nothing. And I don't know that our community wants that, but that's how that district makes it work. So I guess I'm just wondering if there are ways that we can help assess, what the community is given choice. If our community is given different choices or different options, can we help to kind of figure what those are? Because I think when we look at like a blank page, it's always harder, right? Because then you kind of assume things will be normal, but everybody's normal or everybody's idea of hybrid kind of looks different. And so maybe if there are these different kind of options, I mean, I don't know, you guys can figure out what that survey looks like, but like if there's a way to maybe assess the community now, and kind of get more feedback and get a better understanding of what might be helpful, that would be good.
So Leslie, to speak a little bit about the survey, because it has been ongoing. So when we sent out the survey in December, there's still been a lot of work on that survey. So I'm going to ask her to speak a little bit about what we are doing with the survey and how to ensure that we're giving opportunities for parents to still respond.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things is to make sure parents know that as we move into phase 3, there might be a couple iterations of phase 3, just, beginning hybrid and how that hybrid will evolve over time. So I certainly think there's ways to continue to get feedback as we evolve our hybrid models. What I can say is that we have spent a lot of time, or I shouldn't say we, Allison has spent a tremendous amount of time working with our teachers union and our teachers and different groups to gather feedback on models. And so we have done these, as Craig used to say, these flare and folds, getting information from school sites to create what these hybrid models would look like. In regards to communicating, making sure that parents know if what they thought they were signing up for is different now, or at least is different when we step into phase 3, we will make sure that we communicate that clearly with parents. And parents also have an opportunity to share with school sites if they have a desire to make a different choice based on the information that they're learning. We're not sure that a survey to do that is necessary at this time, because our principals they've reached out to hundreds of parents who had not responded to the survey to give them a little bit more information to get to make an informed choice. And we can be flexible and nimble with clearly communicating what the introduction to phase 3 would look like, what those schedules would look like, and what the opportunity would be for a parent to say, I think I'd like to change my choice. And so we'll work on that when we come back from February break.
Thanks, Leslie.
Sylvia, was that it? Or?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll go next here, I guess. I've actually thought a lot about what I want to say, and now I'm sort of at a loss of how to express, I think, the range of emotions I felt the last week or two in particular. I think there are competing interests here. I'll just be frank about it. And they're not necessarily, it's not the kind of thing where they're just really different. And, to Lori's point, right, there are 5 of us, 5 different perspectives. Where I am on a lot of this is I think about our district and some of the values we've talked about in the past, right, of listening to science, we talked about being a district of choice, right, when we were tackling some of the issues earlier, really looking at offering choices to folks. We talk about equity. And I can't help but feel that we, although we've done a lot in this area, that we could actually be doing better. It really bothers me that that in a county where everyone's having the same data, same kind of metrics, we arrive at a different set of conclusions. And I understand at a high level that there are differences among districts. What I don't understand are what are the specifics. The fact that we're larger, it's not like we're taking 15,000 students and trying to do a scheduling for 15,000 students. We're doing scheduling for several hundred students 25 times. And so I think as a computer scientist, and I think about scaling, this I guess I don't understand what the differences are. And it bothers me that our children here are gonna have less on-campus time than, frankly, most of the other surrounding districts. I think other than Santa Clara, who's on orange, I think everybody else is either opened or, as Stacy said, is being on red. We talk, right? So there's the equity piece, there's the choice piece. We have some 40% of the parents who like to come back. And I've seen enough anecdotes, and I understand, you know, there are folks that want to stay, there are folks who want to come back. And I think for me is, can we be doing more to offer a choice for folks who do want to come back, you know? And I think picking up on some of the comments earlier from Satish and Phyllis, even for 10 minutes, even for a little bit of something, right? Because the way it is right now, you know, I don't see how we get back until May. Now, things could get better, in which case, then why do we put all these restrictions in place? And so I guess what I'm coming to is I like for us to do better here. I know Kate talked about an MOU that's being circulated. So I don't know, Stacy, if this meeting is an update or if there's actually a decision from us. And so, but I guess if there were some sort of a decision, I would be on the side of some of the folks to say, can we do a little better? I'm not looking to force people to come back to work against their will. I'm certainly not there, right? But are there folks, in the same way we've had volunteers come back, is there any way that we can be a little bit more flexible in having folks who can and want to come back do so? Folks like one of the speakers earlier from DeVargas talking about he's already had vaccines. So looking for things like that. I think honestly right now, I feel very uncomfortable with this just because I don't see, I think it's even money whether or not we're back before or after the election. There's actually a good chance that this will happen after, in my view, after the parcel tax. And yeah, and I think I would echo some of Phyllis's concerns there. Recognize there's a lot of work here. I recognize, I want to thank the CEA and the leadership there on working on this. I realize that's it's a big step. But and then if I put that aside and I ask myself, are we doing the best we can for the children? Because at the end of the day, that's what the strategic plan is about. It's not about any of this other stuff. Are we serving them the best way we can? I don't think so. I think we can do more. And so I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so thanks. With that then, anybody else have any sort of questions or comments before we, or Stacy, did you want to have any?
Yeah, I think, I think what everyone has said has resonated. And, I actually had an opportunity to meet with groups of, actually follow a couple students through a portion of their day just to see what the experience was. And I will share, there are some heartbreaking stories, and it broke, sitting there and watching students be on a computer all day and they're learning, but it's not the same as in person. And I think we all recognize that it isn't the same as in person, and we do want to get students back. And certainly, the more we can expand, we will continue to put our energy into that. We're really now planning for 3 different phases. We're planning to expand phase 2, we're planning for phase 3, and starting our planning for phase 4. So we will continue to grow, even though our intent is we're hoping we get back into the phase 3 quickly, but we'll continue to expand the phase 2 and take into the what we're hearing, the mental health, that we need to expand that, some of those outdoor experiences. That's always been our plan, is to continue to grow and offer those opportunities. And so that we can increase that time. And 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we're hearing pretty clearly from many of our parents that just that opportunity to connect is important. And so we will continue to grow and expand those areas. We are hopeful that more of our teachers are going to volunteer under this phase 2 before we're able to completely open. And I think there is that level of safety as we've completed our protocols and our guidelines. And, as Carrie alluded to, our checklist, I think there is an increasing sense of safety on our campuses to do some of those small cohorts. So we can certainly push and explore for that as well.
Right. I think my ask would be for action. I know you talk a lot about, and I don't mean it in a negative way, Stacey. I'm very grateful for you being in the position and sort of navigating this difficult situation. But the truth is, the other districts are taking action, and we're here hoping that things will change. And we're talking about doing surveys, and we're talking about doing planning. And I don't know, I think I'm just maybe feeling some of the frustration here in the helplessness of and not really being able to, frankly, some of the values we've talked about in the past. The president, the governor, the CDC, Tony Fauci, I think somehow we're different, and I don't understand why we're different, to be honest. And I don't know what to tell parents who ask, why are we different? I don't think the fact that we're larger I don't, if we can't serve our children appropriately being the size, maybe we shouldn't be this size, right? And if it's a money thing, I like to separate policy from execution. I like to know, is it because it's going to cost $10 million to do this and we don't have it? At least then there's a trade-off, because the way it is now, I don't have a trade-off to choose from. I'm given this choice and I kind of listen to it, and then 2 weeks later I listen to another update, and it's just a little bit frustrating. Now, I'm sorry for the outburst here, Stacy. Thank you for being such a good sort of person here, but it's anyway. Says, please, Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, while we're in discussion, I mean, I guess I think you raise valid points, and I also think that if we do some of the things that I hear you raising, we are then choosing one group over another group again. We have heard loud and clear from our parents in our surveys that one of the number one things that was raised was, I want to stay with my child's teacher. And, the way that other districts, some of these districts that you're saying are ahead of us, if that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that may get to in person or are in person sooner than we are, have made choices to forego that, to not keep children with their teachers, right? That's how they have gotten around not forcing staff to go back. In some cases, in other cases, they have forced staff to go back. But if they've gotten around it, as we heard from Sunnyvale earlier, I spent an hour talking to a Sunnyvale trustee earlier this week. And the way they're able to do that is they're matching their volunteer teachers to the fact that they only have 25% of their families that are looking to come back, right? And so to reorganize their classrooms so that the 25% that want to come back can be with the smaller number of teachers that are feeling okay to come back, works for them, right? We don't have those numbers. And so to a certain extent, I don't want to discount any of what you're saying, Jerry, but I also want to be true to who we are. And I think who we are is what our community tells us are their priorities. Our communities also said they don't want to trade, in person for asynchronous time. And again, a neighboring district that is in that group of districts that is, like I said, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but on a different pace than we are, made that work by making that choice. And so I'm sure that there are parents listening to this who are saying, I'd make that choice. Yes, please give me a different teacher. Give me 2 days a week. I'll take anything. And there are other parents that are saying, I don't want to give that up. I'm not willing to give up my child's teacher in order to make that happen for my child or for somebody else's child. And so I think to be true to who we are and to be true to our community, my view is that we take in the entirety of what we're hearing from our community, and we try to shape our policy or our process that we are going through here based on what we're being asked. And I think we are, and I think we have been across our stakeholders. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that we aren't taking into account all voices. And I think when we're talking about the voices that maybe come and speak loudest about what we're not doing, that's not necessarily representative of all voices. That's representative of voices that disagree most with where we are now, right? Sure. But we have heard from a much broader swath of voices in our community, and that much broader swath is giving us different information. So I think both matter. And of course, the children of all matter. And how, again, I don't know, like my default is how can I meet the needs of the most children possible in terms of what we're hearing. And I feel like that's what came back to us, what has been coming back it is not just planning if what is coming back to us is continuing to move us towards meeting the needs of what our families are telling us the needs are as a majority.
So it sounds like we have agreement, I think, at least on wanting to meet the needs and sort of doing what community is telling us. And correct me if I may not be up on the latest here, but I think the survey, really what we asked were really the two choices, right? And I think and I understand and I appreciate a lot of the parents have said they like to stay with the same teacher, but I don't think we've ever surveyed that. And so I don't know if we have quantitative data on that. Maybe that's something worth understanding if we're going to take action on it. I guess the only data that I have that the survey we've done is the 60-40%. And I'm wondering what we're doing for the 40%.
Well,
And
I mean, the staff report that came back though was based on the comments, right? So there was the open comment field, and staff categorized for us what were the most common themes in those open categories. I mean, that is data. That may not be a yes/no question, but that's still data.
well, I think, please, Leslie.
Yeah, the first survey that we did actually allowed parents to let us know what were their priorities. And so I can pull up that information again or just reshare it with the board, but remaining at one same school and remaining with the same teacher was highly important to our parent community.
Okay, all right. I need to look at the context of that because it's really about what the trade-offs are, right? And I know that the questions have been, it's varied in situations different, but I appreciate your point there, Lori, that it's sort of a way of satisfying what the community is asking for. I guess I'm just wondering how we can serve some of the folks who are in some of these other buckets. I think I'm concerned about the Ds and Fs we have in our schools, and what are we doing to, I think it sounded like from what Carrie's report is that they're in the queue somewhere, but are they actually being served and what can we do about that? So, you know, if it's only 25%, I'll take 25%, I'll take 10%. We prioritize it, but I think just to say we're not doing any until some of these things, I maybe I'm just a little bit stronger than what Satish and Phyllis was saying is really, can we do a little bit better than what we've seen today in the metrics?
And I think in response to that, there certainly, of course, is a concern with our Ds and Fs, and aren't waiting till we're back in person to address that as well. So each of the schools are working with their students that are on that D and F. So I don't want to mislead and think that we're doing any kind of a waiting until students are back in person. Those are being addressed through virtual right now, and so I wanted to reassure that as well.
Phyllis, please go ahead.
Just wanted to piggyback on something you said, Jerry, which really resonates with me because I am huge about choice, parent choice. That's why I've always been so supportive of our alternative programs over many, many years. And when you talk about honoring the wishes of that 40%, I'm wondering, and again, this is an exploration for the staff to bring back to us, but I'm wondering if there is a way that we can say to that 40%, yes, you can come back. We have teachers, maybe not your teacher, maybe not at your neighborhood school, but we have a way for you to come back. And I don't know, maybe 40% of our parents don't want that. Maybe only 5% of our parents want that. But I think it's worth exploring because people who would be willing to do that, if we could make that offering, that might be another way to offer choice to our parents. Again, just a suggestion for exploration.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's a good point. Sorry, I just want to, and then you can go, Satisha. I think what Lori said, I think there is some validity there. It could be that the 40% drops to 5% once they find that that's not the teacher that they would have had or they've had, and but then at least it's something. I think being able to do something for them, and I think Lori brings up a good point. There could be conflicting desires driving these. That 40 may not really be 40. So just thanks. Please go ahead, Satish.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you all what you're saying. Look, one thing which I wanted to add here is I would like to see that some more modification for phase 2 criteria, probably like a phase 2B of C or whatever you call that, right? Since our phase 3 is getting delayed or at least not happening immediately the way which it is. Okay, how much ever we try, or even if you get a vaccine tomorrow or color change, whatever happens, it still takes time. So see that like whether we can, I don't want to use the word dilute, but I want to see that more, whether we can have a little bit more inclusion, like more choices, like more parents can So basically currently it is limited to 2 or 3 categories or criteria. So see that whether we can make it 5 or 6 criteria, probably, right? Like one is like a parent choice. If they really absolutely, they don't meet any of this, but that they still want to send the kids, and see that is there a room for us on that, right? So see that, so phase 2, currently, we are in phase 2A or B, what you call, maybe a C we should create and see whether we can meet that. If in the event of like we are not meeting March 15th or March 29th, the dates are not going further out, I think some point of time we should start triggering this new criteria. Maybe right now it's okay, but in another 15 days or 1 month from now, the criteria should be changed. We cannot stick to the current phase 2 criteria. Then I think we are going to be a big failure, because current phase is 596 versus 15,000 students. It is a huge difference. So we have to see that whether we can, have more kids coming in or participating in this. A suggestion again.
No, and I do want to reassure that is our planning, is that we're continuing to focus on phase 2 and expanding as we're planning for the phase 3 as well.
Yeah, that's good. And we can probably, as I mentioned, you can trigger it after some time, right? Like let's say 15 more days we will stay there, or 1 month we will stay there. Some point of time, we have to have a new criteria which is triggering in, and where we have at least, so many weeks more, they can send the kids there, right? So the rest of the year, whatever you call. So that's it. Yeah.
All right, so thank you, Satish. Any other comments from anyone before we move on? No? Okay, all right, and Stacy, I assume you have the feedback you're looking for?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to another interesting item, 12.3, addressing declining enrollment. Let's see, and Stacy and Leslie, these are yours?
It is, thank you.
All right.
So wanted to bring back tonight, as a follow-up to our conversations that we've had over the course of the last couple of months, and our declining enrollment and our shift as we've moved through these last months. And as everyone knows, we've landed on the parcel tax and are going out, and we have our Measure A, but really had made the commitment that we wanted to continue to address the declining enrollment. And so wanted to bring back what we as a staff would like you to consider and our recommendations. If you could go to the next slide, Jeff. And I do want to share that this has been a ongoing topic. We've been talking about declining for many years. We've tried many solutions for it. We do know that our declining enrollment is going to be ongoing for several years. We've seen the projections out there. But I did want to share, can you go to the next slide, Jeff? I really wanted these to be the considerations, because I think it builds in so strongly to the conversation that we just came off of. I think there's the reality there as we've navigated through the impact of COVID and what we're facing now with reopening, and our planning is to return to in-person learning in the fall. But the long-term impact of what this year and what COVID and the closure of schools have done is really going to be something that we're going to have to address and mitigate minimally, probably for 2 years out. Next year, even if we return to in-person, it's not going to be what we think of typically as a normal year. We're still going to be dealing with meeting students where they are over this loss of a year of in-person. And so I really think we need to be conscious of our energy and our focus. And, as we talk about what we value for our students, I really think that needs to be the conversation, and that needs to be our focus area. We have the Measure A tax, parcel tax out there. Really what we're asking is let's pause and really consider about the declining enrollment. We know that with COVID, that's going to take our focus. We know that when staff comes at a point that we may need to begin the discussion about a closing of a school, that there's a CDE process in place. And so if we can go to the next slide, Jeff. Oops, sorry. So this is really, again, what we've been pondering and thinking about, because our declining enrollment, we're not really sure what's going to happen next year. We're going to likely have some families who are going to opt to still remain in distance learning, and we will be able to continue to offer distance learning. But that could also be something that we do for many years out as a new strand of distance learning. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for us to still address the declining enrollment without ever getting into a discussion about closing schools. But if we did need to discuss the closing of schools, there's already a clear laid out process from CDE that's about a 2-year process. And so our recommendation is that we really just focus on the reopening of schools, getting everybody back in person for the teaching and learning. We focus on the factual information provided on Measure A. We continue with our current open enrollment, our inter-district process that we have in place that allows choice and allows our schools to grow in some of the areas. But we also really focus on the creating opportunities for our small school partnerships. Several weeks ago, our conversation had really shifted when we started talking about declining enrollment, the instructional impact. And we know that some of our smaller schools are struggling when they only have a single classroom and a single teacher at a grade level. And we can help form those partnerships so that they do feel that opportunity to have an ability to collaborate with peers at other grade levels. So we can bridge those gaps for them. And so with that, we would really recommend that we postpone decisions on declining enrollment minimally for 2 years. We know again that minimally that is probably going to be the impact we feel on the COVID, more likely longer. And after the end of the 2 years or longer, if you determine that, then we come back and we can assess where we are with declining enrollment and whether we want to take any steps. I do think there's some creative opportunities that are coming out as we come back to school and to really help and support our campuses with their smaller size. I think early on into the COVID, many parents made the comment about the smaller schools really being optimal during the COVID time because of the small size. And we may need to use those small campuses in these upcoming years to really allow all of our students to be back in person and still meeting some of these social distancing that may be in place for a while. So really that's where we came back from. We met with our enrollment committee. Feedback from our principals is just really, it's so difficult to have a conversation about declining enrollment right now. Even if we were to develop metrics and say, you know, for year 1, year 2, that's going to be on everyone's mind. And it causes anxiety, it causes angst for our families, it causes angst for our teachers anytime that we're talking about declining enrollment. And so that we can truly do what we think is best for students and focus on bringing them back to in-person, we really are recommending putting off any of those conversations about declining enrollment.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. Is that the presentation?
That is.
All right, then we'll go to clarifying questions. Satish, please go ahead.
Okay, my turn. So I think, Stacy, like overall, I like this approach and truly I appreciate that. Like, you know, I think we have enough on our table right now, right? And I think the number one focus is absolutely, I think you spelled it right. And, you know, bringing back the students to, you know, back in person, that's the number one priority. And of course, like Measure A is very top of our thing, right? You know, partial tax is very, very, very critical for us. So let's not derail any of our focus. But I still have one question here is in the last slide, like, you know, postpone decisions on declining enrollment. So can you clarify that? Is it a decision or a discussion? Because the decision is something like we are going to make some action after 2 years, or we are going to start talking after 2 years, because there's a big difference between those two. Because I don't know whether we can make a decision in 2 years, because if you're not going to be talking about this, you know, next few months or year or whatever it is, then in 2 years we cannot make a decision for sure. And I presume that you are saying start discussion, but can you clarify that a little bit?
Absolutely. So really with that, by postponing the decision, it would be in 2 years, we'll come back, minimally in 2 years, we'll come back and we'll start having that discussion that makes any decision. Are we going to look at any process for declining enrollment? Again, this 2 years really allows us the opportunity to get students back in person. It allows us to look at some other creative ways as far as, can we balance enrollment out? Can we give opportunities at some of our smaller schools that families may choose to want to go to a smaller school given the environment now? So it really is a starting point to have the discussion to decide what we want to do.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's my clarifying question here.
All right, thank you, Satish. Lori, please go ahead if you have any.
Sorry, I had to unmute. So, you know, I would say overall, this makes a lot of sense to me. I think, you know, part of what we've struggled with since March is just the sheer enormity of what's going on right now. We're not like other districts in that we are dealing with an underlying pre-existing, you know, budget and schools conversation even before COVID hit. So I'm 100% in favor of, you know, what you're rolling out here in terms of focusing on the return to school, because I think that is our number one priority right now. I think if we can get this parcel passed, that goes a long way toward the budget piece of it. And so then it does leave this declining enrollment piece. I think I agree. I think if I understood what Satish was just saying, that I agree with him that I'm fully in support of pausing on any of the conversations or planning right now, because I think for all the reasons you outlined, we need to focus on the return to schools. I also want to be sure that when and if we are looking at any sort of process or conversation, that it's in a time frame that allows us to really take our time with that. I think I reflected on that at our last meeting, that I don't see that as a rushed process. I see that as a iterative thing. I did want to ask one clarifying question where you raised about school sites and potentially needing more space. I want to clarify, just because I've received some questions about that, and I just want to be really clear so that we're setting the right expectations, that extra space from the standpoint of extra classrooms for spacing out students physically in person is not just, doesn't just hinge on space for us, it hinges on our ability to staff it and to afford that staffing. So I just want to be clear with that we're not just saying we can spread kids out and hire twice as much staff in order to bring everybody back full days, because I don't want to set expectations that I think some people have out there. So just want to be sure we're hitting on that. If you can, I don't know if you can comment on that real quick.
Yeah, so I think there's actually two pieces to that. And, one, and it was in the slide, but really this conversation is based on our parcel tax, because right now we staff so tightly because of funding that if we had the ability to offer additional staff under the sites, that we could then encourage the enrollment to go to those. Or right now what happens is we take open enrollment, we put parents on a waiting list to get into the school. But if we knew that we had those spaces already available, the parents wouldn't have to wait on a waiting list. And oftentimes, they may shuffle to see which one is the waiting list. And so I just think there's a lot more ways that we can be upfront about allowing choice in our district. Not at a large cost, because that isn't the intent either, is to, suddenly use all of our money in other ways, but to really utilize and take advantage of our small campuses and our small schools.
Okay, thanks. And then, yeah, I think the only other thing I wanted to address was you raised, that if and when we're considering it, a state process, which is a 2-year process, I think that initially I'd want to hear more from our enrollment committee about that, but I think that feels like a good place to land for now. So
thank you. And I think if I can stress, because I think Jerry brought it up, or Satish brought it up about time. And I think that's so important when you are talking about any kind of change in campuses, is allowing that time to have that conversation. And so with the CEDE's recommendations, it is an 18 to 24 months, but there's certainly nothing that ties you to that amount of time either.
So was that it, Lori?
No, I'm reflecting on Stacy's comments, and I'll just say, yeah, 18 months wasn't enough for us last time. So, all right. But okay. Yeah, I don't have any other comments. Thank you. I'm just laughing at myself more than anything. So.
Thank you, Lori. Let's see. And I think it's Phyllis, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I like the staff recommendations. They make a lot of sense to me. I like the fact that if we're saying that we're not going to look again for 2 years, that gives us time to hopefully get completely through with this COVID mess. And also then another 2 years beyond that to go through what I think is a good process, the CDE process. That's a long runway, which if the parcel tax, as you say, Stacy, this is all dependent on the passage of the parcel tax, but if the parcel tax passes, that gives us a long runway to really make some decisions about all the things you just described about keeping schools open and making a bit more space for kids and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I'm good with it. Thank you. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Phyllis. And then Sylvia, please go ahead.
I'm in agreement with my colleagues. I think it makes sense to save this discussion, having a discussion from a place of financial instability versus having a discussion from a place of financial stability, I think the outcomes are very different. And so I like the idea of staying optimistic and postponing this discussion so that we can really focus on what's best for students. I would only add, I think that I really would want to make sure that as we make these decisions, we're really looking at what's best educationally, instructionally, academically, and so that we're really taking staff expertise as far as learning outcomes for what best school environments are into that conversation. That's it.
All right, thanks. And then for myself, if we could go to slide 4, it's just a couple of clarifying questions. When we talk about postponing decisions, I just want to be specific. We're talking about school closure decisions, right? We may take other decisions or we just not going to look at declining enrollment. For instance, a small school partnerships, that might be some actions we take to help with declining enrollment. Do you count that, or is decisions just school closure decisions, or just anything with declining enrollment? What's the thinking here?
The thinking there is declining enrollment shouldn't necessarily immediately lend your mind to think of closing schools, because there are other ways to have those discussions about declining enrollment. Staff is going to continue to always be looking at our enrollment numbers and looking to see where we can adjust. When I say the postpone the decisions on declining enrollment, that really is that hard conversation. We come back in 2 years and really look at the declining enrollment. So yes, we wouldn't make any decisions on declining enrollment. The partnership for the small schools, that's something we would want to do for our teachers and our staff. And we can create that, pairing 2 schools up together or using some other collaboration time. So we would absolutely do that, and don't really feel like that's a decision on declining enrollment. That's doing what's best for our students and our teachers.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then my second question then is the 2 years, to talk a bit about sort of the thinking that went into why not 1, why not 3, why not 4, just why 2?
Well, minimally 2. 1, we know that next year, again, based on where we are now, we're planning for phase 4, but we're going to need to do, there's a lot of conversation about the mental health, and I really do think we're going to need to increase what we offer for mental health support for our students. And so the 2-year allows us to get some of those plans into place. I think, we're looking at students that are going to return to school this spring or the fall that have missed an entire year. So next year is going to be our year of first for 2 grade levels coming into the elementary, 2 grade levels into the middle school. And so that's where we said minimally it would be the following year where you'd even begin to have that sense of normalcy. And on that 3rd year, I think we would have had the opportunity 2 summers to do the mitigation catching up, 2 summers to put into place the increased mental health. And so longer possibly, which may be something that we need to come back to the board and say in the fall that it looks like, where we are with our COVID and our in-person, we would push this out for an additional year, but minimally 2 years.
Okay, and this is regardless of the whether or not the partial tax passes.
This would be based on the partial tax passing.
Based on it, if it passes, then we postpone it for 2 years. Got it. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. All right, thanks. I didn't have any other questions. Anybody? We have. Okay, please go ahead, Lori.
Sorry, you prompted me with a question, Jerry. Thank you. So, Stacy, I think what's just dawning on me is I don't want to be in an absence for a period of time about any conversation about small schools if there's something we need to be doing, because I know we've heard that we have some issues around support for teachers who are solo at a grade level, about class distribution and being able to have flexibility in regrouping kids and things like that. So we're not saying we're not going to discuss any of it. We're just saying
or maybe I'll just ask, if you needed to, does this preclude you from bringing forward an item to address some of the educational issues that we're struggling with our small schools right now?
No, I would absolutely want to keep the door open, because as we're forming these partnerships and able to better support our staff and our students, I would want to be bringing that information back out so that we can share the work that we're doing with declining enrollment, that isn't a negative impact. It really is utilizing what we have as our resources and improving it.
Okay, all right, great, thanks. Any other clarifying questions? If not, then we can move on to public comments. And how many comments do we have, Leslie?
We have 2.
2. All right. Well, let's go ahead and invite them up here.
Okay, so if you would please raise your hand, Asaf, Ari, and Valentin.
All right, Asaf, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to talk. So initially, I wanted to comment because I really didn't understand the agenda item, because it actually doesn't addressing the subject matter. It basically says we want to delay a decision for 2 years, and my concern with that is initially the parcel tax was, I wouldn't say marketed, but was aimed as a measure to prevent school closures. I find it hard to see how we get people to vote yes if the goal of the parcel tax is to delay decision for 2 years. It just doesn't seem like something people would, get around. I mean, that's my first concern. My second concern is, I understand specifically to what Lori said. I understand that there's a need to address the needs of the majority, but when the minority is 43%, there is a danger here that if for example, a quarter of those people choose to move to private schools or out of the county, basically the parcel tax, even if it passes, is dead on arrival, because that's, back of the envelope calculation, that makes it about $14 million of lost revenue due to decline enrollment. So my question was also, is there like a number that we expect in the decline which would basically nullify this tax? Thank you.
Thank you, Asaf. And then, let's see, who was the next speaker, Leslie?
Valentin, but I don't think I do not. Oh, Valentin, if you would please, there we go.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, please go ahead, Valentin.
Thank you. Sorry about making you wait. I recently read an interesting piece of information. It's on the county website, and it is an assessment role by our assessor, Larry Stone. And in it, he says that 2020, contrary to what some have expected, was the highest year in terms of taxes collected, that they stand to receive, if memory serves, 35 more billion, that's with a B, to a total of 551.5 billion. So having looked at the breakdown of my taxes, I know that 25% of my property tax goes directly to CUSD. Couple that with Fremont Union High, the total goes to about 44% in my case. So with that phenomenal year tax-wise, I would like to ask, how much extra money does CUSD stand to receive just because of the additional 35 billion that the Santa Clara County have collected or will have collected? Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, let's bring this back to the board here. Just maybe a quick go around comments or questions. Satish?
Nothing specific, I think, Jerry. I think I asked and I summarized also my thought on this.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, just wanted to make sure everyone had a chance. Lori, anything?
Sure. I don't have any further questions or comments on this item. I do want to make one comment that I don't know if this is the time or the place for it, but I have for many years taught school funding at a variety of ways and places throughout our district, and I am happy to serve as a resource for anybody who has questions around your tax bill, how that applies to school funding, how that affects directly our school district. Since this item did reflect a little bit in our discussion on the parcel tax, I feel like I'm okay calling that out. So if you want to understand more about the hows and whys of our school funding and specifically your taxes and this parcel tax, feel free to reach out to my board address. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you for volunteering. And Phyllis, did you have any other comments?
I have nothing. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. And then Sylvia, any other comments?
I'm good.
No? All right, thanks. And then I think for me, I think I heard two questions being raised. I think one of them Lori will take, and some, off the meeting. But then I think Asaf's question, Stacy, I think maybe it's a rhetorical question, but I wonder maybe you might address it. Is so this whole notion of voting for a parcel tax and only getting 2 years of no school closure decisions. Any comments on that, or sort of, yeah?
I would say that the consideration needs to be, when we say minimally 2 years, you're actually getting many more years of no school closures, because in 2 years, when we come back and are re-looking at where we are with declining enrollment and beginning that discussion, we would at that point determine what the next steps are and whether school closures would even be that conversation at that point. And so, we really are looking at several years down the road before that would happen. Again, we do have the parcel tax on the measure, which would be a different conversation. It does allow us, when we built out our long-term stability and showing where we were with our budget, we really did base that on what our enrollment was projected to be, what our staffing was projected to be, what it would be with 25 schools in place, and showed that we could be fiscally stable for 8 years. And so I think that really does give us that confidence that we can meet the instructional needs of our students. We can be creative. We can relook at some of the strategies that we've tried over the years and bring those back. And again, I think the COVID is going to create some new opportunities that maybe we haven't even identified in addressing our students' needs and offering a creative new school or a new opportunity for students. And so I'm looking forward for the future is looking as, I think we're on the right route for a long-term stability and being able to do these creative ideas that we want to, and to give the services. And, again, we're continually hearing about mental health and what would be some of those things that we could do on our campuses with the mental health. And so I'm looking in the trajectory of, we're going to be able to do some great things on our campuses and really utilize the benefits of small campuses versus closing school campuses.
Thanks, Stacy. I'll just also add from my perspective and from a more of a governance perspective, 2 years feels about right, because that would be after the next election. There could be a different makeup here. And I wouldn't want to pass anything now that prohibited that new group of folks, if it's a different set of folks than we have now, from being able to take up issues, right? And so I think 2 years, we're all going to be here for 2 years. And I think, to me, that's fair to make that. So aside from what Stacy said, from a sort of a financial perspective and the positions we're in, just from a governance perspective, I'm actually comfortable with that. So, all right. Anything else before we move on? Doesn't look like it. All right. So, and I guess you have the feedback you need, Stacy, right?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. Then item 13.1, board and superintendent activities and committee reports. Who would like to go? We don't always all have anything, so.
Yeah. So we had myself and Phyllis, we had a board office of us. We had a pretty good conversation with over 80 people attended, and it went pretty well. And the majority of the discussion was on school reopening part of it. That's number one. Number two, myself again, like I'm pairing with people. Myself and Jerry met, you know, the union leaders as well. We had our first meeting, so it was pretty good. That's all.
All right, great. Thank you, Satish. Anyone else? Or Lori, did you anything to share?
I don't think anything for any of my committees except Santa Clara County School Boards Association. I know several of us were on the call today with the superintendent. Next big association meeting is legislative brunch on March 6th in the morning from 9:30 to noon. So hopefully you guys have that on your calendar if you're able to come. And I think that is it.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks, Lori. And then Phyllis, any? You're on mute, I think.
Just board office hours. Satish already told you about that. So that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. And Sylvia?
I attended the Bay Area Region School Boards Association meeting. I'm not sure if a couple of you were on there with me, but we did. They did a presentation on the governor's budget proposal and how that's affecting Bay Area specifically. So if you have, if you are interested, I've got slides. I can forward those to you. And then I had a chance to go to the Blue Hills 5th grade film festival, so that was really fun. And they did, the 5th graders did a whole film presentation and videos of endangered animals. It was a really good job. So that was nice to see the kids and the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was a great presentation they put on at Blue Hills.
Great, thanks. For me, I've been catching up on my MIG classes. I took MIG 4 last, I think all of you have had it. And so this one was on labor relations, and they actually pretty heavily customized it with COVID material. And then, I don't know, there was one of the sort of the teaser things on, maybe you guys have seen this, like who are the most trusted people in a school district? Did you guys get that with MIG 4? Yeah, so I thought that was sort of interesting. So I think the most trusted are the classified staff, and the least trusted are the superintendent and the board members. So I thought that was, anyway, interesting trivia. So
Back to my MIG training, I think it's bus drivers, wasn't it, Jerry?
it was bus drivers and something else, and they kind of generalized it to classified was when they taught it. Yes, but it was.
Custodians were at the top of the list too for trust.
Yes, yes. And then it was board members followed by superintendents. That's kind of the least trusted. So, all right. So with that, we'd like to wish everybody a happy Lunar New Year. It's already Lunar New Year over in China. It'll be for us in about 2 hours here, I guess. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there's one more agenda setting. I'm sorry, 14.1. I'm just not myself today. Anything anyone would like to add to the agenda calendar here? No? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting here at 9:53 p.m. Happy Lunar New Year, everyone. And have a good evening.
I thought of one thing, Jerry. I'm sorry.
Please.
I want to wish everybody a safe break, all of our families and students and staff, and hope it is a healthy and happy one. And please, please, please do your part to help keep our case counts down. That's it.
Okay, great. Well said, Larry.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. Oops. Okay. All right.
Thank you all.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.